A desperate cry tears through the battlefield, echoing from a man whose face is smeared with blood, his eyes filled with raw panic. From the shadows, monstrous beings with blazing scarlet eyes charge forward, their movements swift and merciless, their presence suffocating. The ground shakes as they advance, and the civilians scatter in sheer terror, fleeing in every direction. Screams blend into chaos as fear consumes the entire city. Then, without warning, a thunderous explosion rips through the center of the battlefield. The blast flings bodies aside and sends shockwaves that ripple through the chaos, throwing the battleground into complete disarray. Through the smoke, a warrior emerges. His eyes glow crimson, radiating unstoppable fury. With sword in hand, he launches himself into the horde, each strike unleashing devastating bursts of energy that hurl the creatures back with tremendous force. The clash intensifies, sparks and blinding light erupting with every collision, the battlefield trembling beneath their ferocity. When the dust begins to settle, the warrior drives his sword into the ground, using it to hold himself upright. His voice carries one final remark, acknowledging that this strength is indeed worthy of a knight of hell. His body begins to dissolve in radiant light, fading from existence. The truth is revealed. This fallen hero is none other than the Empire's mightiest swordsman, Oz. Across from where he stood, his monstrous foe stirs. The Death Knight, cloaked in ominous black armor, rises despite the crushing blow it had endured. Cracks spread across its helmet until the mask shatters and falls away, exposing blazing red eyes that refuse to yield. But in that instant, a shocking transformation occurs. The Death Knight regains human form. His eyes widen in disbelief as he gazes upon the devastation around him. Flames devouring the battlefield, the Empire's banners reduced to ash, nothing left but ruin. As silence lingers, slow claps echo across the wasteland. A new figure steps forward, savoring the destruction with twisted delight. With chilling words, he proclaims that vengeance, when left to ripen, is all the sweeter. Standing tall, he announces the fulfillment of a vow made 1,000 years ago, his long-awaited revenge at last complete. And then the veil lifts. The true identity of this terrifying being is revealed. Archlich Dorgo steps forward, his skeletal frame cloaked in dread, crimson eyes burning like fire. Before him stands Emperor Helios, who erupts in rage, his voice booming with fury at the merciless slaughter of his people. But Dorgo only smiles coldly, mocking the Emperor's words as if they were nothing more than a pleasant curse. With biting sarcasm, he declares that the time for talk is over. It is now time for his coronation. Helios, battered yet unyielding, roars back in defiance. He refuses to accept the idea that someone like Dorgo could ever be crowned king. But Dorgo, undeterred, proclaims his triumph with pride. He boasts of uniting the continent for the first time in history and claims the title of emperor as his rightful reward. The emperor's strength falters, his body sinking to his knees in defeat and despair. Dorgo turns away from him, his attention shifting to his loyal commanders. With chilling satisfaction, he praises the Demon Kings and the Death Knight for their tireless efforts, crediting their devotion for the victory he now claims. He then commands the royal crown to be brought forth for his coronation. His followers obey, carrying the crown with solemn reverence. Among them, the Death Knight steps forward, holding the symbol of power with unwavering loyalty. Dorgo looks at him with satisfaction, showering him with praise and gratitude, questioning aloud how he could ever properly repay such devotion. But the Death Knight offers no response. His silence is heavy, his hesitation palpable. Dorgo's tone shifts. Mockery cuts through his words as he declares that such a question is absurd, for the Death Knight is nothing more than a slave. He sneers that serving him is already the greatest reward. The Death Knight extends the crown forward. But before Dorgo can take it, the jewel of sovereignty is suddenly torn apart, violently shattered by the Death Knight's blade. Gasps echo among the Lich's followers, their faces frozen in shock. Dorgo staggers back, his hands flaring with burning crimson light as he summons a barrier around himself. His demon kings immediately spring into action, hurling themselves forward to shield him from the unexpected betrayal. Yet Dorgo himself is left rattled, wounded by the sudden strike. He glares at the Death Knight, disbelief flooding his voice. He demands to know what this means, insisting he never gave such an order. But before he can finish, the Death Knight finally speaks, his voice heavy, filled with fury. Finally, he says, now standing firm, his eyes blazing, the Death Knight declares that he is no longer bound, no longer a pawn, no longer a slave. For the first time, he moves by his own will, his body and his destiny alone. Dorgo reels back in disbelief, his voice trembling with outrage as he demands to know how the Death Knight can still speak. He is certain, absolutely certain, that he erased his will long ago. But the Death Knight answers coldly. His will was never destroyed, only shackled, buried deep within, forced into silence. He explains that he has been imprisoned inside his own body all this time, condemned to watch helplessly, unable to act, as Dorgo used him like a puppet. Desperate to regain control, Dorgo softens his tone, calling the Death Knight his greatest creation. With false generosity, he says he will allow him to vent his anger, for today only. At his command, the Demon Kings surge forward, unleashing a ferocious, coordinated assault meant to break the Knight's defiance. But their efforts are crushed instantly. The Death Knight meets their charge head-on, his power erupting in a cataclysmic wave that tears through the battlefield. A single strike unleashes an explosion so devastating that every one of the Demon Kings is blasted away at once. The display leaves Dorgo shaken to his core, his prized champions obliterated in a heartbeat. Cornered, the Lich chants a darker, more terrible incantation. The ground splits open, and from it rises a vast legion of undead and phantom soldiers. The air fills with the stench of decay as this army of abominations surges toward the Death Knight in a frenzied, chaotic charge. Yet the Knight does not flinch. He stands unmoving, his gaze unwavering, his voice cutting through the chaos with absolute authority. With a single command, he orders the undead to stop. Instantly, the horde freezes in place, bound by a will stronger than Dorgo's own. Then, with chilling resolve, he issues one more order, self-destruction. The army obeys without hesitation. One after another, the undead and demons ignite in suicidal detonations, their bodies exploding in a cataclysmic chain reaction. The battlefield is engulfed in fire and ruin, the blast tearing apart everything around Dorgo. The Lich stares in horror, shaken to his bones. Fear grips him as he whispers to himself, questioning whether he has birthed something far worse than he ever intended, a being whose power could rival even the Overlord. Attempting to calm the storm, he speaks with forced reason, telling the Knight he understands his anger, claiming he too would feel the same if their roles were reversed. But within, Dorgo clings to reassurance. Even if this body is destroyed, he can always escape, his soul ready to slip into another vessel and start anew. But the Death Knight's reply cuts through his hidden thoughts like a blade. He declares that through every endless moment of his long, torturous captivity, he has devoted himself to one single purpose, plotting the perfect way to kill Dorgo. The Death Knight begins to draw in an immense surge of energy, his entire being radiating with overwhelming force. His voice rings out with cold certainty. He has forged a technique meant for one purpose alone, to tear apart Dorgo's soul and annihilate him forever. Terror grips Dorgo. He refuses to believe it possible, yet the weight of the impending strike presses down on him with undeniable reality. Panic takes hold, and he chooses to flee, racing across the battlefield in a desperate attempt to escape. But the Death Knight closes the distance with ease. From above, he descends with a crushing blow that splits the sky itself, the sheer impact shaking the heavens. For a heartbeat, silence falls. Dorgo trembles, clinging to denial. He forces out mocking laughter, declaring the strike nothing but an illusion. Then the truth hits. His voice twists into a scream of agony as the Death Knight's strike pierces through him. His body is hurled upward, wrapped in a swirling vortex of dark energy before plummeting back down. The moment he strikes the ground, his form detonates in a violent eruption, the battlefield trembling under the devastation. From the ruins, what remains of Dorgo's shattered head crashes against the earth. The Death Knight steps forward, expression unchanging, and delivers his final words, ordering him to go to hell. Then, with merciless resolve, he crushes what remains of Dorgo's skull beneath his foot, erasing him completely. From a distance, Emperor Helios stares in disbelief, his voice barely finding the words to ask what has just unfolded before his eyes. The Death Knight staggers, dropping to his knees, drained from the battle. In a heavy silence, he whispers that it is finally over. Yet within that quiet, he knows one last task remains. He longs for a final chance to see the people he lost, even if only in death. The need to apologize burns in him, to atone for the countless sins he committed while bound in Dorgo's chains. Memories flash, the image of lifting an innocent soul upon his blade, their body helpless in his grip. The weight of those horrors drives tears from his eyes, his whispered apologies carried into the emptiness around him. At last, he raises his sword one final time. With unwavering resolve, he drives the blade into his own chest, ending his life as the only atonement he can offer. A gentle voice drifts into his ears, calling his name, Damien. Startled, he recognizes it instantly. It's his sister Louise. Before him, she appears, youthful and radiant, smiling softly as she asks why he is lying in such a place. For the first time in what feels like forever, peace washes over him. But confusion lingers. How could she look so young? He stares, astonished, and finally asks aloud. She only laughs, her voice light and teasing. She wonders if he's trying to flatter her, so she'll defend him when their father scolds him. Then she urges him to come home quickly before the rain falls. Damien blinks, and suddenly he is standing before his family home. His sister runs toward the door, her figure so vividly alive that he can hardly believe it. His heart races as a chilling thought strikes him. He remembers destroying the palace with his own hands. How could it be here now? He looks down at his hands in shock, his mind unraveling. Was everything that happened under Dorgo's control the dream, or is this vision before him the illusion? The doubt gnaws at him until he resolves to test it. He picks up a simple wooden stick from the ground and walks toward a massive rock. Fixing his focus entirely on it, he charges forward with all his strength. The impact lands with a sharp boom, a small shockwave rippling outward. The stick snaps and implodes instantly against the stone. Damien freezes, wide-eyed, staring in disbelief. He holds his position, breath steady, refusing to move. Slowly, a crooked smile spreads across his face, and he mutters in disbelief that this is insane. At that very moment, the rock splinters at the point of impact. A second later, it explodes outward with a deafening force. Damien bursts into laughter, at first quiet, almost nervous, then building into uncontrollable, hysterical laughter. The sound echoes through the falling rain as his mind struggles to comprehend the power now coursing through him. At last, he collapses to the ground, his body trembling, breath ragged, fists clenched. He sits there in the storm, consumed by pain, shock, and the unbearable weight of a reality he cannot yet understand. At that moment, Damien became certain it was no dream. Every moment, every memory, all of it is real. A deep smile spreads across his rain-soaked face as he declares to himself that he has truly returned to the past. Memories flood him. He recalls the reckless boy he once was, a constant source of trouble, his family often calling him crazy. He remembers his father's furious voice, scolding him harshly after being thrown out of a public gathering for causing a scene, shaming their name. He recalls his brother's outrage after he struck the son of Lion Bloom March, sparking a scandal that dragged their family into disgrace. He sees the image of his sister, Louise, helplessly crying as she is taken away, her future ruined because of his foolishness. His mind shifts to the sight of his mother weeping bitterly, asking why he mortgaged their lands and borrowed recklessly, plunging them deeper into ruin. The memories cut deeper. How he squandered every last shred of the family's wealth until his father, at last, cast him out with finality, forbidding him to ever return. That day of exile burns brightest in his memory. His sister Louise ran to him, pressing money into his hand, begging him to be happy despite everything. She smiled at him with such deep affection, whispering only two words that pierced his heart: "Be happy." Overwhelmed with guilt, Damien had snatched the money from her hand, pushed her away, and walked off quickly, too ashamed to face her love. For the first time in his life, he felt the crushing weight of true guilt and shame. Back in the present, sitting in the lush green fields, Damien lowers his gaze, lost in thought. How could he ever turn to the past? His mind drifts back to the final moments of his former life, when he resolved to apologize to his family before death claimed him. He never expected to be granted another chance. Tilting his head toward the heavens, he wonders if this miracle has been gifted by the divine. Then he notices something strange in his hand, startling him. The sight makes him question the reality of his situation even further. He sits in silence, reflecting. His thoughts wander back to the struggles of his youth, how he could never properly wield combat techniques, no matter how he tried. One technique in particular surfaces in his mind: the shattering wave. He can almost see it, its immense power, its devastating force, the sheer destructive might it carried. The image of it burns vividly in his thoughts, a reminder of a skill he had once longed to master. Damien mutters to himself about a technique he's mastered, one that magnifies the force behind a strike, turning it into raw destructive power. He recalls a battle from the past, when a knight once used it so fiercely it was called the Wall Breaker. Damien reminds himself that he gained this very skill after killing that knight. Just then, a voice calls out from the distance. "Young master." Damien turns calmly toward the sound. A servant rushes toward him from the house, breathing hard but hurrying with purpose. Damien studies him for a moment, trying to recall his name. Victor? Was it Victor? Victor, he asks aloud, uncertain. The servant stiffens, quickly confirming the name. He says Lady Louise is asking for Damien immediately, surprised to find him still outside. Nervously, the servant adds that the head of the family is furious. Damien pauses. Did I do something wrong? The servant freezes at the question, staring at him in disbelief. What? You don't know what you did? Damien's confusion only deepens. He truly doesn't remember. But then, a thunderous voice roars from inside the house. "You scoundrel! It's the Viscount of House Haxon, his father." Damien steps inside, only to be greeted by a sudden strike aimed at him. He moves swiftly, dodging with precision, and his father stumbles, falling heavily to the floor. Shock flashes across the Viscount's face at his son's effortless skill. From the ground, he snarls, "You really are insane." Rising to his feet, his fury grows. He bellows that Damien has been thrown out of a tavern for starting a massive brawl, dragging shame upon their family name. His mother and sister rush in, trying desperately to restrain him, urging him to calm down. Damien watches silently as the scene unfolds. He remembers this moment. This is the past, one he has returned to once again. His mother pleads, "Do you truly mean to kill your own son?" His sister holds onto their father tightly, begging him to stop. And in the middle of the chaos, Damien lowers his gaze, feeling utterly defeated. Yet as he looks at them, his father, Paul Osborne Haxon, his mother, Marilda Haxon, and his sister, Louise Haxon, he takes in a moment with unexpected clarity. The family stares back, stunned by his expression, and at last, the Viscount forces himself to calm down. As the family's eyes fix on him, Damien stays still, lost in a quiet wave of remorse. "I've missed this," he thinks, holding on to the moment. Overwhelmed, his eyes begin to well, and tears silently slip down his face. His family looks at him baffled. His sister stares in disbelief. Are you crying? His mother's voice softens with sorrow. Perhaps it's all become too much for him. The silence is broken by his father's harsh tone. Enough. What excuse have you prepared this time? Speak. But Damien lifts his head, his voice steady and clear. I have no excuses. His father freezes, thrown off guard. No excuses? He stares at him as if he's hearing the impossible. You? The one who always hides behind pathetic justifications. Damien meets his gaze firmly. I stain the honor of House Haxon with my recklessness. I will not deny it. I accept full responsibility. Suspicion flashes across his father's face. Try to escape punishment, are you? Don't think I'll let you off that easily. But instead of retreating, Damien bows respectfully. I'll take care of it. His father blinks, stunned, struggling to grasp the meaning of those words. Damien straightens, then turns toward the door. I will resolve this myself. Once it's done, I'll return for the punishment I deserve. At the threshold, he glances back, confidence flickering in his eyes. I'll come back to accept whatever sentence you decide, Father. With that, a calm smile crosses his face, and he walks away. The house falls into silence. His family remains frozen, unable to comprehend the sudden change. His father mutters under his breath, bewildered. Did the boy take a blow to the head? Soon after, Damien arrives at the bustling heart of the commercial city, a sprawling maze of towering buildings and familiar landmarks, alive with noise and movement. Victor walks at his side, though unease is written all over him. Finally, Victor speaks. Young master, this is the place. But are you truly going in? They say it's backed by a criminal syndicate. If something goes wrong, his voice trembles with fear. Damien glances at him calmly. If you're afraid, return home. But Victor clenches his fists, refusing. No, I'll stay by your side. Damien turns to him with a quiet smile. Don't worry, I only intend to offer a polite apology. Nothing more will happen. Damien reassures Victor with a quiet promise. I'll resolve everything this time. With steady steps, he moves toward his destination, hoping for a smooth outcome. Yet, as he walks, his thoughts drift back to the mystery of his return. Why am I back in this time? Whether by fate or divine will, Damien resolves not to squander the chance. He swears he will never again bring harm or disgrace to his family. Every mistake of the past, he vows to correct them all, one by one. As he passes through the crowded streets, two rough-looking men notice him. Their eyes widen in recognition. One sneers, so you dare show your face here again? Damien studies their faces, struggling to recall. Something about them is familiar. Still, his voice is calm. I've only come to offer the owner a sincere apology for the trouble I caused before. For a moment, both men freeze, caught off guard by his composed tone. Then laughter erupts. One smirks. I'll pass your apology to the boss. The other eyes him carefully, surprised by his unexpected composure. You're the eldest son of that shameful house, aren't you? Ha! I expected a reckless fool. But you seem different. Their mocking turns sharper, crueler. But your sister, now that's another story. They exchange vile remarks, speaking of her in ways that drip with indecency. One of them suddenly grabs Damien by the face, pressing hard, and sneers. If you want forgiveness, offer us your pretty sister. That would be enough. A cold fury burns within Damien. The man's smirk falters as a sudden shift overtakes the air. In one smooth motion, Damien snatches the knife from his hand. Holding it with effortless calm, he waves it lightly, his voice steady. I thought this would end quickly, but it seems I overestimated myself. The second man bursts forward with a roar, raising his weapon to strike. But before he can land the blow, a flash of motion cuts the air. An explosive strike severs his hand clean off. The man stumbles back, staring blankly as blood spills from a wound. His severed hand hits the ground with a heavy thud. Shock locks his body, his mind unable to grasp what just happened. Damien holds his ground, unwavering, while dread begins to crawl across the faces of the men before him. With a voice as cold as steel, he tells them, "Since you're so eager, I'll show you what it means to face the eldest son of House Haxon. From the shadows, Victor watches in horror. His hands tremble and tears well in his eyes. How? How is this the same young master who swore he'd resolve things peacefully? The man whose hand was severed finally catches up to reality, his screams ripping through the air and drawing a crowd. Onlookers gather quickly, some whispering with excitement, others smirking at the spectacle. Let's go watch. It looks like a good fight. No, best not get involved. I'm not about to get caught up in that mess, another replies. Victor stays hidden, clutching his chest, his fear for Damien growing heavier with every passing second. In the open street, Damien stands calmly as the uninjured man points a blade at him. His partner writhes on the ground, wailing in agony. Do you even know who we are? The man snarls. Damien's reply is calm, almost dismissive. I don't care who you are. If you're going to strike, then strike. But the man doesn't let it go. He raises his voice, fury lacing every word. We're with the Black Snake, an organization no one in this city dares provoke without paying the price. The name hits Damien, unlocking old memories in a flood. He remembers the Black Snake's grip over the city, how they ruled the streets with fear and violence. He remembers them, the same men who once beat him down mercilessly, mocking and humiliating him over a simple protest at one of their establishments. He remembers the pain, the helplessness, the shame of being forced to bow his head in defeat. But this time, things are different. A shadow crosses Damien's face as he smiles. Dark, chilling, filled with certainty. An apology, huh? No, you are the ones who owe me one. The gangster snarls, raising his weapon. Don't think I'll hold back just because you're some pampered noble. This time, I'll cut you down for good. The man charges forward, unleashing all his strength as he swings his weapon down. Damien stands poised, waiting. With effortless precision, he slips past the strike, moving so swiftly that the gangster can't comprehend what just happened. Before the man can recover, Damien hooks his foot forward, catching the thug's step and sending him stumbling. The gangster's balance breaks completely, his body pitching forward, until his face slams into the hard ground with a sickening thud. The crowd flinches. The man groans, coughing violently, writhing in pain. Damien walks toward him slowly, his calm presence more terrifying than any shout. Even if I killed every last member of your Black Snake, he says coldly, it still wouldn't be enough to satisfy my rage. He raises the weapon high, ready to bring it down on the man's skull. But at the final moment, his grip falters. For the sake of his family, he restrains himself. Instead, he delivers a brutal, crushing strike that doesn't kill, but leaves the man broken, crippled beyond recovery. Now both thugs lie sprawled across the ground, moaning in agony, unable to move. From the edge of the street, another voice rings out, furious. Who the hell is this guy? A fresh group of Black Snake enforcers appear, led by a figure radiating menace. The leader steps forward, eyeing Damien carefully. You're strong, too strong to be wandering alone. Tell me, what organization do you belong to? Damien's answer is calm, unwavering. I belong to no faction. I came here to apologize. But after all this, his eyes narrow. It's your boss who owes me the apology. Laughter erupts from the gang. The leader's expression hardens. Enough lies. If you won't come quietly, we'll drag you instead. Attack. At his command, the enforcers rush Damien with blinding speed. Fatigue already weighs on Damien's body, his breath shallow from the earlier fights. But he steels himself, inhaling deeply, his resolve unshaken. His stance tightens. His eyes sharpen. Then he moves. Swift, precise, devastating. Each motion cuts down an opponent. His strikes land like thunder, one after another, until screams of pain and disbelief echo through the street. Men drop around him, clutching shattered limbs, their eyes wide with terror at the force they can't match. Their leader watches, frozen, unable to comprehend how his men are falling so easily. Yet beneath his calm exterior, Damien feels it, the weight of exhaustion pressing hard. Even this short battle has already left him breathless. Damien fixes his gaze on the gang leader and asks coolly, "Do you still want to continue?" To his surprise, the man steps back, trembling, his bravado collapsing. Please forgive me. Spare me," he stammers, his body shaking with fear. But Damien doesn't grant mercy so easily. With a sudden burst of speed, he lunges forward. The leader's eyes go wide with terror, and he turns on his heel, fleeing in panic, screaming as he scrambles to escape. His desperate cries echo through the street as Damien's footsteps thunder close behind him. When the leader dares to glance back, he sees Damien almost at his neck. Crack! A sickening sound of breaking bones fills the air. Inside the tavern, the mood is still light, patrons drinking, chatting, laughing. But the noise outside cuts through the chatter, pulling their attention. Silence falls as they strain to listen. Then the doors burst open. The gang leader stumbles inside, wild-eyed and trembling. But it's clear he's not moving on his own. A blade is pressed against his throat, forcing him forward. The crowd's eyes widen as Damien steps in behind him, calm, composed, holding the knife steady. With a cold voice, he releases the man and lets him collapse to the ground. "You should have listened when I was being nice." The tavern falls into utter silence. Every eye fixes on Damien. For a moment, the entire room seems frozen. Then chaos erupts. Screams echo as guests bolt from their seats, shouting in terror. "A killer! Run!" Chairs topple, mugs shatter, and people rush for the exits in a frenzy. When the chaos subsides, Damien remains in the center of the room, steady and unshaken. He believes he's already overcome the worst of it. But then, a new voice cuts through the noise. "What is the meaning of this?" From above, a man descends the stairs. The tavern owner, Anderson Holm, his expression twisted with fury and disbelief. His eyes immediately darted to the fallen gang members littering the floor, his face contorting in anger. Damien looks up at him, calm and confident. "Your guards are no longer a problem. I handled them." Anderson's face darkens, rage mixing with shock. His men, members of the Black Serpent Gang, defeated so easily? Impossible. "Who are you?" he demands, voice thundering. "Who dares cause this kind of trouble in my establishment?" Damien straightens and answers with pride. "Damien Haxon, eldest son of House Haxon." Anderson's expression shifts instantly, his fury giving way to surprise. A noble, a Haxon, standing in his tavern. Damien raises his voice just enough to carry across the tavern. "I didn't come here to stir chaos. I came for an apology. From you, the owner." Anderson blinks, baffled. "An apology?" Damien steps forward, his tone sharp and unwavering. "In the past, this place robbed its guests with outrageous prices. And when I protested, your men beat me down, left me humiliated in the streets. That incident branded me as a drunken fool in this city, a disgrace that has haunted me ever since." For a moment, his mind drifts back. He remembers that bitter day when his father cast him out, tired of his reckless reputation. The weight of his family's shame presses heavily against him even now. Damien's voice hardens. "That single night cost my family dearly. And you dare laugh." Anderson does laugh, mocking, dripping with scorn. "So this is it? You've come to mourn your lost honor? How pitiful." His eyes gleam cruelly as he adds, "But tell me, does House Haxon even have honor left to lose?" The words cut deep. Anderson presses further, sneering. "I will never apologize. Instead, you'll pay for the damage you've caused today." Damien doesn't argue. Instead, a quiet, unsettling smile spreads across his face. Had he simply apologized, I may have spared him. But now, the air shifts. Damien takes a single step forward, so sharp, so decisive, that Anderson flinches, frozen in place. The energy around Damien spikes. His body lowers in emotion, speed coiling like a spring about to unleash. "Then you'll pay dearly for every word you've spoken," Damien says, his eyes flashing with a deadly glint. Knife in hand, he surges forward, a storm of intent aimed directly at Anderson. But before he can close the distance, clang, a sudden blur cuts across his path. Steel collides with steel, releasing a violent shockwave that blasts through the tavern. The aura is overwhelming, bright, and oppressive, sending Damien crashing backward to the floor. For the first time, his confidence falters as he looks up, stunned by the sheer force. Standing before Anderson is a figure clad in armor, radiating power. Anderson exhales in visible relief, his voice almost reverent. "Lord Ted, thank the heavens you arrived." Damien pushes himself up, eyes narrowing in disbelief. "A knight? Here." The realization strikes hard. Why would someone like him be working in a place like this? The knight steps forward, fully revealed at last. His armor gleams under the tavern's dim light, refined and imposing, his face hidden in shadow, amplifying the suffocating dread that spreads through the room. A narration cuts in, describing the order of knights, their ranks, their power. From mere trainees to apprentice knights, and finally to official knights, beings beyond the grasp of ordinary men. Unlike others, official knights command aura with ease, wielding strength so great they can shatter mountains with a single strike or cleave fortress walls as though they were parchment. They are transcendents, walking calamities in human form. Anderson laughs with smug pride, his voice dripping arrogance. "Do you see now? This man before you, he's a true knight. Lord Ted himself." Ted raises his weapon slowly, aura beginning to surge around him. Power radiates from his body, coiling and snapping like lightning, as he prepares to unleash a strike meant to end the fight in a single blow. Damien's eyes narrow. He recognizes the technique instantly. That move, he mutters under his breath. The aura gathering around Ted is terrifying, majestic, and overwhelming. Damien knows he cannot simply dodge. He must respond in kind. Planting his feet firmly, he steels himself, calling forth a technique of his own. And then, memories rush back. He recalls a day in his past when he encountered the infamous Phantom Assassin, a killer spoken of only in whispers. Damien watches in his mind's eye as the assassin slaughters a knight without hesitation, his blade moving faster than death itself. The assassin's voice echoes in memory, mocking the fallen. "You don't even know who Dorgo is. If I really followed his plan and killed every last human, there'd be no fun left in this world." After cutting down his victim, the Phantom Assassin turns, pointing his blade at the Death Knight standing before him. His tone is sharp, amused. "That's why I'm telling you. Shut your mouth and leave. Unless you want to join him." But the Death Knight refuses to move, his stance firm, weapon steady. Unyielding, the assassin smiles, eyes gleaming. "Still standing? Then you've chosen death." He lifts his blade with eerie grace. "You asked for it, so I'll show you my secret technique." His voice turns chilling, almost playful. The human body is made mostly of water. In that instant, he perceives every drop of water within the Death Knight's body. To his vision, the knight's figure shifts into a fluid form, and with his hidden technique, he cuts straight through. Ted then gathers every ounce of strength, channeling his energy and aura into a single decisive strike, determined to bring the fight to an end. Damien immediately grasps the nature of the attack. Whispering under his breath, he recognizes the technique. Ted releases a secret art, majestic, overwhelming, and terrifying in its power, drawing upon immense energy. Faced with this, Damien steadies himself, preparing his own counter, intent on meeting force with force. At that moment, fragments of the past surge in Damien's mind. The scene shifts back to Ted, his face mirroring the assassin's final expression. Shocked, shaken, stammering a desperate no. The seasoned knight crumbles to the ground, unmoving. The sight leaves everyone frozen in horror. It is then Damien fully understands. Every battle he has ever fought has ended the same way. No matter who stands against him, their fate is sealed. For his power is unique, the ability to absorb the strength of his enemies and wield it as his own. The tavern owner trembles uncontrollably, retreating in terror after witnessing the overwhelming display. Fear spreads across his face as he realizes just how deep a danger he has brought upon himself. In desperation, he drops to his knees, bowing repeatedly, begging forgiveness for insulting the Haxon family name. With a shaking voice, he offers a fortune as compensation, pleading to know if it will suffice. Damien accepts without hesitation. Though his true aim was the apology, he certainly has no reason to turn down money. Calmly, he issues an order for all wealth and valuables in the tavern to be collected, his tone carrying absolute authority that no one dares question. Victor, the servant, peeks in cautiously, his voice trembling as he quickly answers Damien's command with a nervous, "Yes, sir." As he takes in the aftermath of what just occurred, disbelief runs through his mind. If he hadn't witnessed it himself, he would never have believed it possible. He marvels in silence, wondering where and when Damien had mastered swordsmanship to such a terrifying level. The tavern owner, still shaken, bids them farewell with forced politeness, gesturing nervously as if hoping to appease them until they are safely gone. On their way out, Victor can't contain his excitement, blurting out that it's the first time in his life he has ever seen so much gold and treasure. Behind them, the tavern owner remains quiet, his face twisted in fury. Inwardly, he swears he will reclaim every last coin and turn to the Black Serpent's boss for help. But before he can linger too long on his thoughts, a sudden strike sends him reeling. The room erupts in panic as he clutches his bleeding ear, screaming in pain. Damien steps forward, his presence heavy with threat, and warns him clearly, "Deliver this message to the Black Serpent gang. If they dare target his family again, he will never forgive them." Writhing on the ground, the tavern owner spits curses through the pain, vowing revenge with hate boiling in his chest. Meanwhile, Damien and Victor leave calmly, the weight of gold and valuables in hand, walking beneath the glow of the evening sunset. As they depart, Damien reflects quietly. He knows well that his actions cannot erase the failures of his past. But in this second chance at life, he swears never again to let his family down. Turning to Victor with a faint smile, he tells him to head home. Victor beams and answers with heartfelt loyalty, "Yes, young master." Elsewhere, the scene shifts to a lavish mansion bearing the name Lion Bloom March. Inside, a young man speaks gently to his brother, asking if he's ever heard the saying, "Love always comes with pain." His brother stares back in confusion, mocking him lightly, asking if he's heading off to a duel with such a dramatic expression. But the young man only smiles mysteriously and replies that he isn't seeking a duel. He's on a quest to find love. At that moment, Damien and Victor finally arrive back at the Haxenbear estate. Damien stretches with ease, remarking to Victor that he hasn't slept so deeply in a very long time. Victor quietly admits to himself, with a trace of envy, how Damien can rest so soundly while he spent the entire night awake, haunted by worries from the day before. Damien lets out a soft chuckle, admitting that things didn't exactly go as planned. Still, in the end, they walked away with a generous reward. More importantly, he says with firm confidence, word of what happened will spread quickly, and soon, no one will dare to look down on House Haxon again. Victor nods, his perception of Damien shifting. For the first time, he recognizes a sharpness in Damien's mind, a clear awareness he had never noticed before. Yet concern lingers. He voices his unease about the Black Serpent gang, reminding Damien that they left behind a wounded trainee knight and several gang members in dire condition. Damien, however, brushes it off with absolute confidence. No matter how daring the gang may be, they wouldn't recklessly challenge a noble family. And if they ever do, he vows he will deal with them himself. Victor can't help but admire his master's combat skill and finally asks, with burning curiosity, where and when Damien learned such extraordinary techniques. Damien responds with a nervous smile, hesitating before saying he only trained occasionally whenever he found the chance. But before the moment lingers, their exchange is cut short by a thunderous voice shouting Damien's name. His father storms into view, face burning with fury as he rushes toward him, demanding to know where he has been all day. grabbing Damien by the shoulders. His father's anger mixes with anxiety, pressing him for answers. Has he caused even more trouble? Damien meets him with calm confidence, smiling as he reassures him. Just as he promised, he has already settled the problem. Then he gestures to Victor to reveal what they brought back. Victor obediently opens the bag, and the glittering piles of gold and treasures spill into sight. Both parents cry out in shock. Our money. Damien explains smoothly. He returned to the tavern where the incident began and cleared the misunderstanding. The error had been in the billing, and as compensation, the tavern owner handed over the treasure. His father, though staring in amazement, silently doubts whether such a tale could be real. But his mother quickly counters, saying there's no other explanation. Where else would so much treasure come from? Damien, still smiling with confidence, tells his father that if he doubts the story, he should ask Victor, who was at his side the entire time. Turning toward Victor, he urges him once more to confirm his words. Victor pauses, caught in hesitation, before stammering out confirmation. His words seal the story in Damien's parents' minds, leaving them fully convinced. Admiration fills the room, praise flowing toward Damien. Yet in Victor's heart, a quiet thought lingers. Damien can't seem to utter even a single sentence without bending the truth. The realization leaves him both impressed and bewildered. Outside, in the calm of the open air, Damien exhales deeply, relief washing over him. With the matter settled in his favor, he darts into the forest, sprinting with all his strength to test the limits of his body. The rush doesn't last long. Soon he slows, lungs burning, his body weighed down by exhaustion. Catching his breath, Damien reflects on his current weakness. This body isn't strong enough. It won't carry him to the goals he's set. Yet, instead of despair, he breaks into a smile, reaching into his cloak to pull out a small vial. He calls himself fortunate for obtaining such a treasure. His mind drifts back to when he first asked the tavern owner about it. At the time, curiosity led him to question its contents. The man explained that inside was a special tonic crafted by the Dan School of Alchemy, a potion capable of greatly enhancing stamina and energy. Damien had pressed further, puzzled by the name. The tavern owner told him the school was a renowned group dedicated to creating tonics and alchemical elixirs. The memory resurfaces. He had indeed heard of them before. Their reputation stretches far. Their creations so prized they are traded for gemstones by weight. With that thought, relief sweeps over him again. This vial is no ordinary find. It's a rare and priceless gift. Without hesitation, Damien drinks it down. A sharp breath escapes him as a vibrant aura bursts forth, surging through his body. Power spreads within him, filling every fiber with renewed strength. In that moment, his resolve hardens. If he wants true power, he must first build his stamina. To regain the might he once held in his past life, especially to face Dorgo, this is the path he must take. The image of Dorgo rises in his memory, the terrifying face etched into his mind. Damien knows with certainty that the undead army will return to this world in only a few years. And so, he swears to himself, he will obtain the strength needed to kill Dorgo once and for all. Damien exhales slowly, his resolve firm. Only by regaining that level of strength will he truly be able to protect his family's happiness. With determination burning in his chest, he launches forward, sprinting ahead with power in every stride. His vow echoes within him. This time, Dorgo, I will kill you for sure. Far away, under the pale light of the moon, a hidden fortress comes into view, the secret base of the Black Serpent Gang. Within its dark halls, their leader sits at a table, eating carelessly, his voice cold as he speaks. The one who failed, he declares, is worthless now. They have lost one of their best men, and that is the end of it. The members murmur regret over Ted's state, suggesting he should at least receive medical treatment. But their leader, Cedric Walker, cuts them off with a chilling command. Ignore him and throw him away. He is no longer of value. One of the men hesitates, his voice uncertain as he questions whether Cedric is sure. But Cedric's tone sharpens, ruthless and final. Ted is nothing but a broken tool. They can always buy another with money. Just then, a stir of movement breaks the room's tension. Ted begins to rise, struggling against his broken state. Gasps ripple through the gang. Cedric narrows his eyes before letting out a mocking laugh. So, he still has enough strength to crawl. With a cruel grin, Cedric taunts him further, saying he'll offer another chance, accept medical treatment, and he might rehire him. But Ted spits back in fury, shouting that he doesn't need Cedric's pity. He charges forward, moving with desperate speed. Yet mid-lunge, his body freezes, suspended in an eerie and unnatural stillness. A sinister aura of shadow unfurls behind him, wrapping the air in dread. Shock floods Ted's face as he cries out in confusion. Then, with brutal force, the dark energy slams into him, his screams echoing through the hall. Out of the shadows, a cloaked figure steps into view. He turns to Cedric, his voice calm but laced with menace, and asks if this display of power is enough for a first demonstration. Cedric's lips curl into a satisfied smile. Of course, he answers coldly. Now, show me what else you're capable of. Ted thrashes helplessly, shouting in rage, demanding to be released. But the cloaked man begins to chant in a language alien and arcane. Each word deepens the dread in the air, and Ted's panic surges, his body trembling against the growing tide of dark power. A terrifying surge of dark energy whirls violently around Ted, forcing a blood-curdling scream from his throat. He thrashes in terror, unable to comprehend what's happening. From within the swirling aura, monstrous forms begin to emerge, shadows with glowing red eyes and razor-sharp fangs. Their presence drives Ted to the edge of madness as he begs desperately for mercy. The darkness only grows denser, wrapping around him until it swallows him whole. His cries echo as the aura tears into him piece by piece. A blinding eruption of dark energy shakes the room, shredding his body apart. One by one, his limbs are consumed by the abyss, until only a single leg remains, dropping heavily to the ground with a sickening thud. The last remnant lands at Cedric's feet. Disgust flashes across his face as he covers his nose, muttering that the sight is revolting. The cloaked man, calm and detached, turns to him and asks if this demonstration is satisfactory. Cedric nods, but adds coldly that next time, it should be cleaner. With a chilling smile, the cloaked figure inquires about his next assignment. Cedric leans forward, a sinister grin spreading as he explains. A certain noble has crossed the Black Serpents, harming their organization. He wants revenge, but carried out indirectly. The greater the damage, the higher the reward. He slides over an advance payment. The cloaked man accepts it without hesitation, bowing his head slightly in thanks. His smile deepens, sharp and unsettling, as he assures Cedric that the task will be done, and he can be relied on fully. Elsewhere, Damien continues pushing his body through relentless training. Sweat pours, muscles ache, but his will doesn't falter. The tonic's effects are undeniable. His stamina has already improved dramatically in a short span. Even so, unease gnaws at him. Days have passed in eerie silence. He expected the Black Serpents to strike back swiftly, yet nothing has come. That quiet feels wrong. A sudden shift behind him snaps him alert. His instincts flare, and he spins sharply, muttering under his breath, just as I thought. Without hesitation, he launches forward at full speed, cursing the Black Serpent bastards as he slams a crushing strike into the figure hidden in the bushes. A pained cry bursts from the shadows. Damien suddenly stiffens, his eyes widening as he recognizes the face of the one he struck. He mutters in shock. Sitting on the ground before him is none other than his younger brother, Abel Haxon. Abel looks up at him, startled, and calls out softly, "Big brother." Still shaken, Abel steadies himself with a wince, then lets out a short laugh. "You've gotten stronger since the last time I saw you. For a second, I thought you almost broke my neck." Damien freezes at those words, a haunting memory flashing in his mind. Abel's body lying motionless in the past. The weight of it leaves him silent. After a moment, he extends his hand toward Abel, his voice steady but apologetic. I didn't mean to. That wasn't on purpose. Abel stares at the offered hand, hesitant. His expression hardens as he finally speaks. Father said you went to the tavern to settle things peacefully. But then we heard a fight broke out. People were injured. Tell me, Damien, you're not the one who caused it, are you? You wouldn't lie to the family, would you? Without flinching, Damien replies with calm certainty. No, I was the one who did it. Abel's temper flares. Liar. You expect me to believe that? Did you hire someone else to fight for you? You've never been the type to handle battles yourself. He points accusingly at Damien, his voice sharp. Stop bringing shame to this family. I'm always the one cleaning up after you. Instead of reacting with anger, Damien places a hand gently on Abel's head, his tone soft. Abel, you've always been the one who puts the family above everything. But listen to me, there's nothing to fear. I promise, nothing bad will happen again. Just as his words settle, a desperate voice cuts through the air. Young masters, a servant comes running, breathless and frantic. There's a serious problem. Both brothers exchange startled glances before hurrying back to the house. Tension grips them as Damien pushes the door open and steps inside, Abel right behind him, his unease written all over him. The moment Damien enters, his father's voice rings out, heavy with anger. Damien! And then, from deeper within the room, another voice, steady and calm, speaks. So you finally come. Erwin Lionbloom is in the room with a sly smile, turning to Damien's father as though nothing is amiss. I was just explaining what happened at the party, he says smoothly. Forgive me for arriving unannounced. Damien's eyes narrow. This again. I've lived through this scene before. He recognizes him instantly, Erwin. His memory flashes back to that night in his previous life, every detail vivid. Without holding back, Damien roars. What the hell did you just say? Erwin raises his hands as if to defend himself. Wait. I didn't mean to insult anyone. But Damien doesn't let up. Don't act innocent. You mocked me, and you try to harass my sister. Erwin smirks, feigning confusion. You must be mistaken. Maybe you were drunk? I don't recall anything like that. He then leans in close, voice low and taunting. And what if I had done it? With a cruel smile, he goads Damien further. If I said it outright, what exactly could you do about it? Rage boils over. Damien remembers how, in his past life, he always restrained himself in moments like this. But this time, he doesn't hesitate. His fist smashes into Erwin's face, the blow landing with devastating force. Erwin crashes to the floor, blood pouring as he groans in pain. Yet Damien quickly realizes something. Erwin is no weakling. He's a trained knight, but he didn't even try to block the strike. He wanted this to happen. Erwin slowly gets up, clutching his face but wearing a twisted smirk. Then, without shame, he plays his next card. Actually, he says boldly, I must confess, I admire Louise deeply. That's why I'd like your blessing, Viscount, to marry her. He settles onto the sofa as though nothing just happened, his voice calm and deliberate. Yes, I wish to marry Louise. I ask for your approval. The room falls into stunned silence. Everyone stares at him, speechless with shock. Damien clenches his fists, knowing all too well this is the exact scheme Erwin had used before, turning violence into leverage to blackmail their family. With feigned humility, Erwin adds, let's just consider tonight a misunderstanding, if you agree to the marriage. But Louise's father's response is immediate and unwavering. Impossible. It will never happen. Erwin's smile falters into a cold glare. Then tell me, how much can the Haxon family endure the wrath of mine? Someone must take responsibility for insulting me. His voice turns harsh, leaving only two options. Either pay the price, or give me Louise. Inside, Louise's father weighs the reality. The Lilley-Bloom family holds enormous power in the kingdom. Yet no matter how dangerous it is, he knows one thing. He cannot hand his daughter over to a man as vile as Erwin. At that moment, Louise steps quietly into the room. With a steady gaze, she looks around and, to everyone's shock, calmly declares that she will accept the marriage proposal. The room erupts in disbelief. Her father shouts in defiance. Abel freezes in fury and demands she take back her words, while Damien can only watch in sorrow, silently calling out to her in his heart. Louise meets their reactions with a gentle smile, reassuring them that it's fine. She will follow Sir Erwin. But Damien, seeing through that forced smile, feels the crushing weight of regret. Once again, because of him, his sister is being dragged into despair. Meanwhile, Erwin secretly basks in triumph, convinced he has finally cornered them. With smug satisfaction, he praises Louise's decision and strides forward, announcing that he will soon send an official request and discuss the details with the family. Just then, Damien blocks his path, his sharp gaze radiating murderous intent. Erwin, unfazed, sneers confidently, certain that Damien is still as weak as before. He pats Damien on the shoulder, mocking him with a poisonous grin. "Well then, should I start calling you brother-in-law now?" he jeers. Inwardly, he curses Damien, certain that this worthless man will once again ruin his sister's life. Damien doesn't respond, his silence heavy with rage. He mutters something under his breath, too quiet for anyone to catch. Louise notices the storm rising within her brother and calls out to him softly, trying to calm him down. But Erwin, ignorant and arrogant, presses on with his taunts, leaning in with a smirk, demanding Damien repeat what he just said. That was the final spark. In a flash of fury, Damien's fist connects with Erwin's face, the impact so fierce that Erwin is sent flying, blood pouring from his nose like a burst dam. For once, his vile mouth is shut. Inside, Damien chastises himself. He shouldn't have let Erwin provoke him, not when his family and sister's peace was at stake. But as Erwin crashes to the ground and Louise covers her mouth in alarm, Damien stares down coldly at the fallen man. "No, you bastard," he mutters. And in that moment, he accepts it fully. There's no holding back anymore. His mind flashes back to that moment when he stormed out, consumed by raw, unrestrained emotion. After hearing from a servant that the carriage carrying Louise and Erwin had arrived, Damien rushed with urgency, his heart pounding at the thought of finally seeing his sister again after so long. He sprinted toward the door, full of anticipation, until a chilling scream from inside froze him in his tracks. The door creaked open, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Erwin was yanking Louise by the hair, her cries of pain echoing through the room. As Oven scolded her harshly for forcing him to bring her back, Erwin stepped closer, spitting venomous insults, degrading her and mocking her family. Louise crumpled to the floor under his torment, and Erwin towered over her with a twisted grin. "Ah, dear Louise," he muttered darkly, raising his fist with the cruel promise of a lesson she would never forget. Damien stood frozen, paralyzed by helplessness as guilt consumed him. He collapsed to his knees, his mind screaming that all of this was his fault, that his choices had dragged his sister into this nightmare. But as Erwin prepared to strike, something snapped inside him. Rage burned in Damien's eyes, his guilt igniting into fury. Clenching his fist, he roared no. The room fell into stunned silence. Everyone stared in disbelief at Damien's audacity. Erwin's guards instantly drew their swords, shouting furiously, "Don't tell us you dare to lay a hand on our young lord." Their blades pointed at him, their outrage filling the air. But Erwin, wiping the blood calmly from his face, rose with a mocking smile as though unfazed. Sword in hand, he sneered, "Twice, you dared to strike my face twice." His voice dripped with malice as he leaned in closer, taunting, "Tell me, brother-in-law, is it a death wish you carry?" The guards rushed forward, desperate to restrain the chaos, attempting to calm their enraged master. But Erwin shoved their concern aside, shouting furiously for them to step back. His eyes burned with vengeance. He would deal with Damien himself. When the guard stepped forward, bowing slightly, "Allow me to deal with this insolent fool," he offered. But Erwin brushed him off, unwilling to share the stage. With a sudden surge of power, his aura burst forth. shoving the guards back as he ordered them to stand down. His eyes locked on Damien, his voice cold and firm. This was his fight. Abel and Louise stood frozen, alarm coursing through them as the confrontation grew sharper. Erwin raised his sword, advancing slowly, his glare unwavering. "Tell me," he asked with venom, "how do you plan to resolve this?" Louise's heart tightened. She knew Erwin had no intention of letting her brother escape unscathed. Fear overwhelmed her, and she cried out desperately, "Please stop." Her voice trembled with terror, certain something dreadful would happen if the clash went on. But Damien stepped forward, shielding her with his arm, standing tall with unshakable resolve. He turned to her with a gentle smile, his tone calm and steady. "Don't worry," he reassured. "I'll take care of this." Deep inside, he wished with all his being that she would never have to sacrifice herself again. Turning back toward Erwin, Damien declared boldly, "Let's settle this with a duel." Erwin blinked, startled. "A duel?" he repeated in disbelief. Damien nodded calmly. "If you defeat me, I'll accept your terms. But if I win, this ends here, once and for all." Erwin scoffed, objecting. "That hardly benefits me. Louise already agreed to marry me." Damien's lips curled into a taunting smile. "Why change the subject? Unless you're afraid of losing." The mockery hit its mark. Rage flared in Erwin's eyes as his thoughts boiled. That arrogant wretch. He dared strike my face, and now he talks down to me. I've been waiting for this chance. His grip tightened on his sword. "I'll crush him completely and then take Louise for myself." With malice burning, Erwin raised his blade high. "Very well. I accept your challenge." Word of the duel spread quickly, and soon a crowd gathered in the estate's courtyard to witness the clash between Damien and Erwin. Faces were tense with anticipation. Damien's mother trembled with worry, clutching her hands. "Should we stop this?" she whispered nervously. But his father, though clearly uneasy, shook his head. "No, look at him. Damien's confidence means he has something planned." All that remained was hope. Some prayed for a miracle, but Abel did not. Unlike his father, he knew miracles wouldn't decide this fight. As Erwin readied himself with razor-sharp focus, Abel could only conclude that Damien stood no chance. Erwin was a trained knight, brimming with confidence, his blade glinting as he showcased his mastery. Across from him, Damien stood unarmed. Erwin smirked mockingly. "How do you plan to fight without a weapon?" But Damien answered with calm certainty, pulling out a small dining fork. "No need to worry." He twirled it lightly in his hand, a confident grin spreading across his face. "This is more than enough." The crowd gasped in disbelief. "A fork?" Erwin burst into laughter, openly ridiculing him. "What's wrong? Has fear made you lose your mind?" Without hesitation, Erwin lunged, moving with the deadly speed of a knight. His sword cut through the air, his voice echoing, "I won't hold back." But Damien's figure shifted effortlessly, slipping past the strike as if it were nothing. Erwin's eyes widened in shock. Snarling with frustration, he gathered his strength and unleashed a devastating move from the lion's roar combat style. His aura surged, taking the form of a massive, glowing lion that roared across the courtyard, tearing apart the stone ground and filling the air with dust and debris. When the smoke cleared, Damien stood untouched, calm, unharmed, his fork still in hand. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Erwin's guards stared in disbelief, whispering to themselves, "How is he still standing? How can he withstand the lion's roar without even a blade?" Even Erwin felt a flicker of unease. None of his strikes had connected. Every swing dodged with impossible precision. Damien's lips curved into a subtle smile. Inside, he acknowledged the truth. His relentless training had paid off. He now fully grasped the fighting style of the Lionbloom family. Memories stirred. Memories of his previous life, when he had once battled Michael Lionbloom, Erwin's elder brother. Compared to Michael's refined skill, Erwin's technique was riddled with weaknesses. Erwin roared in fury, hurling another colossal wave of aura at Damien, daring him to avoid this one. The sheer force radiating from it was undeniable, far stronger than anything before. Damien's eyes narrowed. This one, Evading it with just a fork may not be possible. He exhaled sharply, making his choice. Then I'll use it, the hero's saint technique. The collision of Damien's power against Erwin's unleashed a massive blast, shaking the dueling ground with violent force. Louise and Abel watched in dread, their nerves wound tight as the fight unfolded before them. In a moment that stunned everyone, Erwin's sword clashed against Damien's fork. The sound rang sharp through the courtyard, and Erwin froze in disbelief. With flawless precision, Damien twisted the fork, redirecting Erwin's blade exactly where he wanted it. Then, with a subtle shift, he unleashed a hidden technique, one known only to him. Secret move, countless thunder, shadow revelation. His body shot forward like lightning. Goodbye, he whispered in his heart, striking with blinding speed. The fork's pronged edge pressed firmly against Erwin's neck, locking him in place. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Erwin's eyes went wide with terror, unable to process how he had been bested by a simple dining fork. Even Abel, Louise, and Damien's parents could hardly believe what they were witnessing. Oven stumbled backward in horror as the realization sank in. The fork was poised at his young master's throat. Overcome by panic, he fell to the ground, crying out in humiliation. Damien stood tall, his expression calm, yet unyielding. Inside, his rage still burned, but he forced it down. For his family's sake, he would not go so far as to kill Erwin. Instead, he looked down at the fallen knight and spoke firmly, his voice steady. It's clear now I've won. Do you have any complaints? He stepped closer, his words carrying absolute authority. As I said before, you'll leave this place. Now, Erwin, pale and trembling, had no choice but to retreat. Later, the family gathered around the dining table. The air was heavy, no one daring to speak too much. When the meal ended, Damien rose quietly. I'll be resuming my training, he said simply, leaving the table in silence. His mother's eyes followed him with worry. Turning to her husband, she asked softly, Aren't you going to speak with him about yesterday? Abel cut in first, rambling in disbelief, his voice almost frantic. He spoke endlessly about how much Damien had changed, how different he was now from the brother they once knew. His mother leaned toward their father, whispering nervously. Abel seems shaken too. Please, you should ask Damien. But the father ended it at once. Enough. Don't press him. He'll speak when he's ready. His tone was final, and the room fell into silence again. The mother glanced at her husband with gentle affection, trying to offer him comfort, urging him to stay strong through these troubled times. Yet inside, the father wrestled with his own thoughts. He was curious, deeply so, but something inside warned him not to ask. Damien was his son, the one he loved dearly, yet now, he found him frightening. Elsewhere, Damien knelt alone in the hallway, fastening heavy sandbags around his legs, preparing for training. The silence broke when Louise's voice called out clearly. She hurried toward him, and Damien turned, waiting patiently for her words. Louise offered a gentle smile. I'm relieved you haven't left yet. I wanted to speak with you about yesterday. Before she could say more, Damien lowered his head slightly. He remembered. He owed her an apology. I'm sorry, he said sincerely. I acted too rashly. I may have embarrassed you. But Louise quickly shook her head, interrupting him. No, that's not true. Don't blame yourself. Stepping closer, she looked at him with warmth. Thank you for everything you did for me. She admitted quietly that when she agreed to follow Erwin, she had been terrified. Deep down, she had never wanted to go. Hearing this, Damien felt his chest tighten. I knew it, he thought. Her words confirmed what he had already sensed, and in that instant, he understood how much his actions had meant to her. Louise's memories of the confrontation came rushing back. How Damien had stood up against Erwin, how he had protected her. With a heartfelt smile, she looked at him again and said with sincerity, Truly, thank you. Damien was silent for a moment before his lips curved into a smile. No, he replied softly. I should be the one thanking you. I've always been grateful to you. Louise blinked in surprise, touched by his words. As Damien turned to leave, she quickly stopped him. Wait, I have something important to give you. From behind her, she revealed a sword, distinctive, carefully kept. Handing it over with a gentle smile, she explained, "This is the only sword Father set aside, especially for you. He asked me to give it to you, so you could use it in your training." Her tone softened as she continued, "Even if he doesn't always show it. Father loves you. He values you deeply. He wanted you to know that." Then, straightening her voice in mock seriousness, mimicking their father's stern tone, she added, "And as heir to the Viscount, you are never to use a fork instead of sword again." Damien gripped the sword firmly, raising it high with pride. The weight in his hands was more than steel. It was a symbol of trust, a gift carrying his father's acknowledgement. His chest swelled with confidence, honored by the blade now in his possession. Elsewhere, his father suddenly sneezed, rubbing his nose in confusion. A chill ran down his spine, and he shivered, muttering to himself, puzzled by the strange sensation. Outside the manor, the air began to shift. A dark, ominous energy seeped silently through the night, creeping closer to the estate. The guards stationed at the gate were lax, leaning on their spears in boredom, unaware of the danger inching toward them. One of them frowned suddenly. The air, it felt strange, heavy. But before he could act, his eyelids grew unbearably heavy. Both guards slumped to the ground as a dense, shadowy fog rolled over them, plunging them into a deep, unnatural sleep. The dark energy slithered forward, pushing open the gate with eerie ease. From within its swirling mass, a figure emerged, stepping across the threshold. Cloaked in shadow, he advanced silently toward the manor. Inside, the household slept peacefully, oblivious. The sinister figure moved like a phantom, his presence undetected, until he reached Louise's room. She lay asleep, breathing softly, defenseless. The man's face emerged from the gloom, twisted with a wicked smile. Well, he murmured, staring at her. "I came here on other business for the Black Serpent Gang, but finding you here is an unexpected bonus." He reached out a hand, fingers stretching toward her, intent on harm. "Hey!" The word cut through the silence like a blade. The man spun around in shock. At the doorway stood Damien, calm and steady, his gaze fixed on the intruder. "What are you doing here?" Damien asked evenly, his tone almost casual. Then, with a faint smirk, he added, "I sense something strange tonight. Tell me, would there happen to be a stranger lurking around here?" The shadowed figure stiffened. Impossible, he thought, panic-stirring. "My spell should have forced everyone into sleep. How is he awake?" With a furious snarl, he raised his hand and hurled a surge of dark magic straight at Damien. But Damien slipped aside with effortless grace, the spell shattering against the wall. The man's eyes widened in disbelief. "Who the hell are you?" he shouted. Damien's reply was calm, unshaken. "That's the question you should be asking yourself." "This is my home," Damien said firmly, his voice steady. "So tell me, who are you, and what exactly do you plan to do to my sister?" The intruder's smirk faded into irritation. From the hallway, anxious voices echoed, guards approaching, calling out after hearing noise near Louise's room. The sound made the man grimace. Troublesome. He realized that if they saw him here, it would complicate everything. Without hesitation, he wove dark magic and dissolved into shadow. His body slipped out the window, vanishing into the night with impossible speed. All that remained was the trace of his sinister energy clinging to the air like smoke. Damien rushed to the window, scanning the darkness. Did I lose him? But just as he leaned forward, a pulse of eerie, unsettling energy rippled past him, making his skin crawl. Outside the manor, unease spread like a silent wave. Stable hands murmured in confusion as they discovered a dreadful sight. The prized horse lay dead. Shocked, they stumbled over each other, muttering in distress. How? It was perfectly fine yesterday. Fear gripped them. How would the Viscount react to such a loss? Damien appeared among them, calm and composed. "This isn't misfortune," he declared clearly, drawing their startled eyes. "And I've not come to blame you. Step back for now. I'll handle this." The servants quickly obeyed, moving aside as Damien crouched by the fallen horse. His eyes sharpened, tracing the faint residue clinging to the body. He placed a hand gently on its side, feeling the lingering pulse of energy. His thoughts tightened. The same power. It was identical to what he had sensed from the intruder last night. A terrifying aura, steeped in malice. There was no mistake. This was black magic. Damien straightened, certainty settling heavy in his chest. The man he had faced was no ordinary enemy. He was a dark sorcerer. And as the rest of the Haxon family slept peacefully, unaware of the danger pressing closer around them, Damien felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Their safety rested on him. The trail of shadowy energy slithered away from the stables, retreating swiftly through the night. Its path wound deep into the forest near the estate, leading to a concealed cave. Inside, the dark sorcerer muttered to himself, satisfied with his night's work. He chuckled, mocking the leader of the Black Serpent Gang. Fools so easy to deceive. They thought I'd prepared some curse for them, when in truth it was nothing but scraps. He laughed bitterly, yet pride gleamed in his eyes. With the supplies he had secured, he wouldn't need to gather more for quite some time. Still, resentment gnawed at him. To think he had been reduced to such petty tasks, scraping together coin, hiding in the shadows, hunted endlessly by the organization. For now, he would remain in hiding. It was the only way. But just as he prepared to leave, a voice drifted through the cave. Calm, steady, yet sharp as a blade. What a foul stench. Smells like an old man rotting away in here, living alone without even knowing how to air out his home. The sorcerer froze, his eyes widening. Slowly, he turned, and there stood Damien, poised and unshaken, his voice cutting through the gloom. Damien smiled faintly. Yes, I am Damien, eldest son of Viscount Haxon, the same one you met last night. The sorcerer stepped back in disbelief, his thoughts racing. How'd he find me here? As though reading his mind, Damien tilted his head and smirked. I followed the stench you left behind. Not hard, really. The sorcerer narrowed his eyes, masking his unease with words. So, you're the one who dared face the Black Serpent Gang. I see now. You're not just some reckless fool. Damien's smile deepened, calm and mocking. Good thing I was cautious. Tell me, are you the one the Black Serpents hired? The sorcerer straightened, admitting without hesitation, yes. They wanted me to bring pain upon your family, to make the Haxons suffer. Damien's tone turned cold, his voice laced with disdain. Pathetic, to sell yourself to such filth. You've taken on their mission, and for that, you'll die here. The dark mage stiffened, his guard snapping up as he shouted in disbelief. What did you just say? Rage twisted his features, and his aura flared violently. So bold, I'll enjoy capturing you. I'll break you, make you my pet. Yes, you'll keep me entertained for a long, long time. Damien gripped his sword, his stance firm and unshaken. His voice was calm, but his words cut deep. I swore I wouldn't kill in this life. But for scum like you, his eyes narrowed with venom. I'll make an exception. His expression hardened, pure menace flickering across his face. I despise your kind. Dark sorcerers who toy with lives as though they're nothing. The sorcerer faltered, startled that Damien had seen through him so easily. Still, his lips curled into a cruel grin. You know, ordinary boy, I can see that much. His fury surged, and with a roar he unleashed a massive wave of black energy, its destructive force shaking the cavern walls. You can't escape me. You'll die here. But Damien was already moving. He surged forward, slipping past the attack with fluid, unshakable speed. The sorcerer's eyes widened as his target closed the gap far faster than expected. Steel rang out. Damien's blade came crashing down with tremendous force, striking directly. The sorcerer staggered, his body jolting under the impact, groaning as he struggled to block. He stumbled back, pain etched across his face, only for his wounds to knit together almost instantly, dark energy twisting through his flesh. Damien froze briefly, recognition flashing in his mind. That regeneration, it's the same as what I saw at the palace. The sorcerer's lips curled into a wicked smile. Surprised? Your little strike did nothing. You can't kill me that easily. Damien's grip tightened on his sword. His glare sharpened. Then I'll cut you apart, piece by piece, until nothing's left but dust. With renewed fury, he charged again, his sword carving through the air in a relentless storm. Each strike landed, forcing the sorcerer back, his body battered under the onslaught. Yet the dark mage only laughed through the pain, retreating a step with a mocking grin. Interesting, he hissed, his voice dripping with amusement. Your skill is impressive, but still, not enough to defeat me. The sorcerer suddenly stilled, his tone dropping to a low, sinister whisper. From the moment you stepped in here, you were already a dead man. Damien's eyes narrowed, but then shock struck him. Glowing marks flared to life around the cave. Countless magical traps, each radiating an oppressive, terrifying aura, encircled him on all sides. The sorcerer smirked with cruel satisfaction. These wards were prepared long ago, in case the organization ever came after me. And now, you've walked straight into them. Damien's grip tightened on his sword. He understood instantly. These weren't ordinary traps. The sheer pressure pouring from them told him how lethal they truly were. The dark sorcerer raised his hand, his voice echoing with malice. You'll regret ever crossing me. To challenge someone of my rank in a world of dark magic was the last mistake you'll ever make. Darkness gathered, swirling into a torrent of decay. The sorcerer unleashed his most powerful spell, his words dripping with cruelty. Die slowly. Die in agony, boy, as your body rots away. Black energy surged toward Damien, filling the cave with a crushing, suffocating weight. The air quaked with danger. Yet Damien's eyes burned with defiance. He steadied himself, every nerve focused, refusing to yield. The sorcerer cackled as the spell consumed its target. Arrogant child, you've rushed headlong into your own death. The more damage I cause, the more the Black Serpent Gang will pay me. And now, with you gone, I'll return to claim that girl. But just as he turned, a voice cut through the gloom. Decay magic, huh? Damien's tone was sharp, mocking. That's the spell you used. The sorcerer froze. His head whipped around, and his smile vanished. Damien stood tall, unbroken, his blade still at his side. Impossible, the mage muttered. How are you still standing? How do you even know about decay magic? Damien only smiled faintly, a quiet, unreadable expression. Who knows? Inside, though, realization struck him like lightning. So it's still here, that power. The authority I thought I had lost when I returned to this time. A memory flooded his mind, an image so vivid it made his chest tighten. The towering, dreadful figure of Dorgo. His voice echoed like a curse in Damien's soul. Beloved Knight of Death. The weight of the title returned to him, along with the knowledge of the power he still carried, the authority of the rulers. And with that, Damien understood. The battle before him was far more dangerous than he had first believed. Damien kneels before the figure in his memory, listening as the sorcerer speaks of giving him a powerful body and unmatched magic. But the sorcerer warns, such gifts alone are not enough. He continues, declaring that he has granted Damien an additional force, one meant to shape him into the ultimate weapon, the purest embodiment of darkness. In that memory, Dorgu pours overwhelming power into him, determined to mold Damien into the deadliest creation possible. A sinister laugh escapes the sorcerer, proud of the result of his ritual. Suddenly, waves of black energy erupt around them, immense and unstoppable, surging forth like a divine storm. Standing tall, the sorcerer boasts that this strength comes directly from the gods themselves. He releases the energy with his full focus, determined to see the ritual through. The air trembles as the black energy spreads, devouring everything in its path. Dorgu gazes at the force with madness, realizing the scale of destruction he has unleashed. The power seeps violently into Damien's body, racking him with unbearable pain. He screams as the torrent of energy crashes into him, tearing through his being. The darkness bursts outward, shaking the world as Damien becomes the vessel of this fearsome might. The sorcerer shouts with twisted delight, claiming his desire has finally been fulfilled. His eyes glimmer with manic joy as he confirms that the nightmare power he long sought is now in his grasp. Around Damien, the dreadful energy takes form, cloaking him in an awe-inspiring presence. Staring at his own body, Damien marvels at this force, wondering how it still lingers with him even after traveling back through time. Just then, a sudden strike of massive energy tears through the scene, raising the tension to its peak. With flawless speed, Damien evades the crushing blow, dodging the attack hurled at him by the very sorcerer who had empowered him. Shocked, the sorcerer demands to know how Damien survived his magic. But Damien answers coolly, almost mocking, saying, "Doesn't everyone have a hidden trump card ready for a moment like this?" It's then that Damien recalls something crucial. The sorcerer had once said he was a high-ranking member of the Yolan group. Memories flash in Damien's mind. He recalls the Yolan group, a clandestine organization notorious for its mastery of assassination and forbidden dark arts. With that knowledge, he realizes the sorcerer before him isn't just skilled. He is an expert whose power is far beyond ordinary. The sorcerer, radiating overwhelming energy, narrows his gaze. He begins to suspect Damien harbors a hidden weapon, something dangerous enough to turn the tide against him. If the fight drags on, he knows it will only grow riskier. He must finish this now. Slowly, he raises his hand and reveals a gleaming bracelet. He admits it was meant to be used against the church itself, but circumstances have forced him to bring it out here. As his words fade, the bracelet ignites with a radiant green glow, energy rushing up his arm and flooding his body. A surge of magic erupts from him, shaking the ground as his form shifts, confidence returning to his stance. The bracelet pulses violently, and from it pours an immense wave of dark power that takes on a monstrous form. Damien can only watch, astonished at the sheer magnitude of what's being unleashed. It becomes clear to him, this is no ordinary trinket. The bracelet is an artifact crafted to contain and mask unfathomable magical reserves. And now, those reserves are fully unleashed. The sorcerer grins with absolute certainty, his voice thundering as he declares this power to be unstoppable. With fury, he hurls his deadliest spell at Damien, roaring for him to be consumed by hellfire and perish. The attack crashes forward, an eruption so violent it tears the land apart, leaving behind a gaping crater smothered in dark energy. The sorcerer stands tall, convinced the battle has ended in his favor. A wicked smirk stretches across his face as he proclaims Damien is now trapped within the inferno, condemned to burn for eternity. But then, a voice cuts through the darkness. Calm, steady, unshaken. Damien's voice. He tells the sorcerer that he is gravely mistaken. Out of the shadows, Damien emerges, his body enveloped in a mysterious aura that radiates authority. The air trembles as this energy spreads, swallowing every trace of dark magic and erasing it completely. Damien speaks with unshakable confidence. The authority of greed, he declares, is not a mere shield against magic. It is a force that devours all dark energy entirely. The sorcerer's confidence shatters as he stares in disbelief. Panic rises within him. He cannot comprehend the ability before his eyes, nor how Damien has come to wield such terrifying power. Damien answers the sorcerer with a mocking tone, saying it doesn't matter, and he can think of it as nothing more than superior equipment. His expression hardens as he readies himself, frustrated by the cruel irony of it all, forced to wield the power of the one he despises most. Yet, against this enemy, he has no choice. To win, he must draw on the strength of the Knight of Death. The sorcerer's eyes widen when he sees what Damien is preparing. A surge of energy forms around Damien's sword, an aura blade. It is a skill known only to the most seasoned sword masters. Fear flashes across the sorcerer's face as the realization sinks in. In shock, he stammers, begging Damien to stop. But Damien does not slow down. He charges forward without hesitation, pouring everything into his strike. With devastating force, he unleashes his secret technique, Soul Severance. The strike lands, erupting with explosive force. The ground shatters, and the battlefield is consumed in destruction. As the dust clears, Damien stands tall, his sword glowing with the power of his aura. The victory is his. The sorcerer lies buried beneath rubble, coughing violently as he struggles to cling to life. Damien walks closer, calm and composed. Pointing his sword at the fallen sorcerer, he tells him coldly that if he speaks before he dies, his suffering will be eased. Then, in a firm and threatening voice, Damien demands the location of the Black Serpent Gang's hideout. The scene shifts to the next morning. A carriage rolls smoothly into the heart of Trade City, the air peaceful and quiet. Inside, Victor, Damien's ever-loyal servant, looks at his master with both curiosity and unease. He asks what Damien intends to do at the city's landmark once more. Damien simply smiles, his answer quiet but sharp. If Victor is to follow him, he should do so without asking unnecessary questions. Victor feels a chill, unsettled. His master's expression may be calm, but the book in his hands radiates an ominous aura. Unable to contain his curiosity, Victor asks what it is that Damien is reading so intently. Damien closes the book slightly, a mysterious smile playing on his lips. His reply is simple. It's a very special book. Damien reveals to Victor that the book in his hands is one of dark magic, taken as spoils from the mage he defeated the previous night. Victor's face tightens with anxiety. He admits that while his knowledge is limited, he knows enough. Dark magic tomes are perilous, and to even obtain one is nearly impossible. Before he can continue, Victor suddenly stiffens. His nose catches a foul, unsettling stench drifting through the air. He glances around with alarm, his expression betraying both surprise and unease as he wonders what could be causing such a disturbing smell. Damien breaks the silence, announcing that they have reached their destination. Stepping out of the carriage, he carries with him a sealed sack. His voice is sharp and commanding as he tells Victor there is something of great importance he must do. He then places the sack into Victor's hands. Victor, uneasy, asks what is inside. Damien answers without hesitation, his tone calm and unshaken, a human head. Victor freezes, horrified. He stares at the sack, his voice trembling as he insists such a thing cannot be real. But when he dares to check, his worst fear is confirmed. Overcome by shock and terror, Victor screams and flings the sack away, unable to bear it. Damien quickly retrieves it, his demeanor unchanged. He urges Victor to compose himself, reminding him they are in a public space with many eyes upon them. He promises that explanations will come later, but right now, a task must be completed. He presses the sack back into Victor's hands, instructing him to deliver it to the location he had mentioned before. Meanwhile, Damien walks on, soon arriving at the headquarters of the Black Serpent Gang. The massive building towers in the heart of the city, its prominence impossible to miss. Damien remarks with biting sarcasm on their choice, mocking how bold they are to establish such a base in the open. As he approaches, he takes note of the luxurious appearance of the place, commenting dryly on how comfortable the gang must be living. His bold approach immediately draws the attention of the guards posted outside. They glare at him, demanding to know who dares walk up so confidently to their base. Damien answers clearly, his tone calm and unwavering. I am Damien Haxon of the Viscount Haxon family. One of the guards bursts into laughter, mocking the name. He sneers, saying Haxon sounds more like pig's feet, and ridicules Damien for introducing himself so formally. But before the laughter continues, another guard stiffens. His eyes narrow as fragments of memory return, something their gang leader had warned them about. Damien smiles with unwavering confidence, remarking that it seems they already know who he is. He tells the guards plainly that he has urgent business with their leader and orders them to step aside. To his surprise, the guards move back immediately, granting him passage without the slightest resistance. But instead of letting him enter freely, one of them raises a signal flare and fires it into the sky. The bright streak bursts above the headquarters, a warning to everyone inside that an intruder has arrived. Damien tilts his head upward, calmly watching the flare as it burns in the air, fully aware of the storm it is about to summon. A smirk spreads across one of the guards' faces as he taunts Damien, admitting he never intended to let him pass so easily. Within moments, gang members flood the area, rushing toward Damien from all directions. Damien narrows his eyes, his expression turning cold and serious. He demands to know what they've just done. The mocking guard laughs, calling it nothing more than a welcoming gift from their boss. Surrounded by enemies on all sides, Damien stands tall and fearless. His voice cuts through the tension as he warns them. They will regret this. Elsewhere within the city, Governor Sebastian Baker sits comfortably at a banquet, raising a toast as he thanks Cedric, leader of the Black Serpent Gang, for his hospitality. Laughter fills the room, and the atmosphere is relaxed. Sir Robert, a knight of the city guard, leans back with flushed cheeks, calling for more wine as he drinks without restraint. The governor, all smiles, addresses his guests warmly. He says he is glad to see them enjoying themselves and hopes they will visit more often. Turning to Cedric, he praises the gang, declaring his confidence that the Black Serpents can easily manage the city's operations. He adds that it would please him greatly if they took control of the entire entertainment district. With assurance, he promises to silence any opposition with his authority. Sir Robert, drunk and stumbling over his words, gazes at Cedric and apologizes clumsily, saying he wishes there was more he could do for him. Cedric, wearing his ever-polite mask, addresses him respectfully as Sir Robert. He assures him that his service in protecting the city is more than enough. With a deceptive smile, Cedric flatters him further, acknowledging how difficult it is to maintain order in a city as vast as Landwork. He insists that Robert has always been modest and that there is no need to belittle himself. Robert's face reddens even more at the praise, clearly flattered. He leans closer, telling Cedric that if the gang ever needs anything, he only has to ask, and Robert will do everything he can. All the while, Cedric's manner remains polite and gracious, but behind his calm expression, his thoughts are cold and filled with disdain. His courteous words mask nothing but contempt for the men at his table. Inside the hall, Cedric hides his scheming thoughts behind a mask of courtesy. But within himself, he reveals his true intentions. Once the Black Serpent Gang seizes total control of the city, everyone will fall under his rule. His expression twists into something dark and deranged as he whispers in his mind that, sooner or later, they will all bow before him. The moment is shattered when a man bursts through the doors, shouting in panic, "Boss!" The sudden interruption startles everyone present. Cedric's eyes flare with anger at the disruption, demanding to know what has caused such chaos. The man bows his head, apologizing quickly, but Cedric doesn't wait. He strides out of the hall, ordering the man to explain without delay. In a hushed and uneasy voice, the man delivers the message, and Cedric's eyes narrow in shock when he hears the name Damien Haxon. His disbelief is plain on his face. Fury boils within him. What had the Dark Sorcerer been doing all this time? Still, Cedric finds some comfort in knowing he had already prepared his men for this very possibility. Forcing his expression calm, he tells the messenger to leave, assuring him there is no need for worry. Damien, he claims, has already dug his own grave. Meanwhile, outside, Damien is surrounded on every side by the gang. They believe him trapped, convinced he has walked straight into his own death. But Damien doesn't hesitate. He pulls out a vial, drinks it in one swift motion, and shatters it to the ground. Power bursts from him as his energy surges, his entire body bracing for battle. His eyes ignite with a brilliant glow, his movements becoming impossibly fast. In a flash, he tears into the mob. His strikes are precise and devastating, cutting through the gang with ferocity. Each blow sends enemies flying aside, his confidence unshaken as he dominates the field with sheer strength. And then, As the chaos rages, a cloaked figure emerges, shrouded in dark robes. The stranger steps forward with calm certainty. In a steady voice, the figure declares, "There is no need to worry. He has someone to rely on at this moment." Back inside, Cedric's face drains of color. Horror grips him as he senses the shift. He rushes to the balcony, expecting some minor disturbance, perhaps a nuisance easily handled. But what greets his eyes leaves him frozen. Below, his men lie scattered across the ground, writhing and groaning in pain. At the center, Damien stands tall, untouched, his presence commanding the battlefield. Cedric stares, disbelief etched deep into his features. His voice trembles with suspicion as he turns to one of his men, demanding to know, was that young man truly Damien Haxon? The man answers with a nervous certainty, and Cedric is left stunned. He remembers the rumors about Damien, supposedly a worthless heir with no talent or strength. But now, panic sets in as he wonders if the dark sorcerer he sent has actually been defeated by Damien. Realizing the danger, Cedric hurries back inside, desperate to call for reinforcements. Meanwhile, Damien notices something unusual, instantly putting him on guard. He quickly realizes the object heading his way is charged with magic. Before he can react further, 3 of Cedric's men appear on the rooftop, wielding a massive enchanted weapon. They declare their challenge, aiming to crush him under its devastating power. A blazing torrent erupts from their weapon, flames consuming everything in its path before erupting into a violent explosion. Yet, when the smoke clears, Damien is still standing, unscathed, his sword raised firmly against the inferno. One of the gang members scoffs, mocking Damien for thinking a single sword could withstand such a massive fire strike. But Damien steps forward without hesitation, activating a secret technique known as infinite insight. The flames swirl back unnaturally, rebounding at terrifying speed toward their casters. Horror flashes across the men's faces as their own attack surges back upon them, detonating in a thunderous blast that tears apart much of the sight. When the flames die down, Damien remains tall and resolute, scanning the destruction with a sharp, almost mocking glance. With cold determination, he mutters that it's time to expose Cedric, the Black Serpent Gang's leader. Just as he moves, a sinister energy presses down from above, forcing Damien to turn sharply. A towering figure crashes down with brutal force, driving a crushing blow at him. Damien evades swiftly, retreating a safe distance before locking eyes on his new opponent. The man radiates an overwhelming aura, so dense it stings against Damien's skin. In a deep, taunting voice, the stranger finally speaks, saying he has been curious to find out who dared stir up such chaos. As the dust settles, Damien quickly realizes the man before him isn't just any opponent. He's an official knight, skilled and dangerous, making the battle ahead far more serious. Suddenly, the city's armored soldiers flood the area, closing in on Damien with weapons drawn. From among them, a furious voice cuts through the tension. Sebastian steps forward, pointing at Damien and hurling accusations. He declares himself Sebastian Baker, governor of the city, and announces that he will personally punish Damien for causing chaos. But Damien remains composed, replying coolly, "Why would you punish me?" feigning ignorance of the charges. Sebastian, provoked by Damien's calm tone, unleashes a tirade. He accuses Damien of attacking Cedric, a supposedly respected businessman, and of endangering innocent lives. Watching from the shadows, Cedric smirks with delight as Sebastian brands Damien's actions as unforgivable crimes. Damien, however, turns his gaze towards Cedric, the very leader of the Black Serpent Gang. With a mocking smile, he taunts him, saying he has finally tracked him down. He adds that their conversation should begin with a punch. Then, with cutting sarcasm, Damien remarks that he had suspected ties between the gang and city officials, but he hadn't expected those ties to be so fragile. The fact that Cedric is being paraded as an honest merchant only deepens his mockery. Sebastian explodes with rage, shouting that if Damien begs for forgiveness now, his punishment might be less severe. Damien dismisses the threat without hesitation, replying that asking for forgiveness only makes sense if one is guilty. That single remark drives the governor past the point of control. Turning sharply to the knight beside him, he orders, "Sir Robert, I tried to reason with him because of his youth. But since he refuses, he has no one to blame for what follows." Sir Robert steps forward, weapon raised high, preparing for combat. Standing firm, Damien shows no sign of fear. Robert, puzzled by his unwavering stance, declares himself the knight protector of the city and demands Damien lay down his sword and surrender immediately. Yet Damien remains calm and unyielding. Robert studies him, wondering whether this young man is incredibly brave or just reckless. But Damien answers with complete certainty. He isn't foolish, only confident in himself. That bold response only fuels Robert's interest in facing him head-on. Robert charges at Damien with explosive speed, his massive weapon tearing through the air. Damien manages to dodge, but the strike smashes into the ground, leaving the earth cracked and broken beneath them. The sheer force makes Damien instantly aware of Robert's overwhelming strength, something he had expected, yet now feels firsthand. Before Damien can fully recover, Robert closes in again, his fist surging forward with devastating power. Damien sees it, but it's already too late to escape. He raises his arm to block, bracing for the impact. The punch lands, and the force alone sends him flying, the shockwave rippling across the battlefield. Though hurled backward, Damien twists midair, refusing to crash down carelessly. He steadies himself, landing on one knee and one foot. A sharp pain shoots through him as he glances at his arm, now strained and battered from blocking the strike. He mutters to himself that even while trying to deflect, Robert's attack still broke through, leaving him concerned about how long he can endure against such raw power. The battle rages on. Suddenly, Robert unleashes a strike at frightening speed, catching Damien off guard. The blow barely misses, leaving Damien shaken at just how close it came. Robert sneers, mocking him, asking what's distracting him so much that he could be blindsided in the middle of combat. Damien grits his teeth, realizing his opponent is not only brutally strong, but also fast enough to push him to his limits. Just as Robert prepares to press the attack further, another figure steps in. A flash of strength sends Robert's weapon flying as the newcomer blocks his strike and counters with force that shakes the field. Cedric and his men stare in disbelief, their smug expressions twisting into dread. Fear ripples through them as they realize the tide of battle has shifted. Robert freezes, stunned that someone else has entered the fight. He roars furiously, demanding to know who dares interfere. At that moment, a radiant presence fills the area. A paladin steps forward, her energy blazing with holy power, her confidence unshakable. Robert's eyes widen in shock, his voice trembling as he questions why a knight of the church would appear here of all places. Behind him, Damien hears a familiar voice call out, "Young master." Turning, he sees Victor racing toward him. Damien smirks and asks why he took so long to arrive. Overjoyed, Victor shouts as he runs closer, announcing again and again with uncontainable excitement, "I've arrived, young master. I'm here." Cedric's composure shatters the moment he sees the paladin step onto the battlefield. The presence of a church knight, accompanied by attendants, fills him with dread. If the church has uncovered his dealings with the dark sorcerer, the consequences will be disastrous. Meanwhile, Victor rushes to Damien's side, asking with genuine concern if he is all right. Damien, keeping his sarcasm sharp, replies that of course he isn't. He nearly turned into a skeleton waiting for Victor to show up. Turning his eyes toward the paladin, Damien realizes everything is unfolding exactly as he intended. Her presence guarantees the situation will bend in his favor. Victor's face lights up with unrestrained excitement. Beaming, he declares that while he may not excel at everything, he's unmatched when it comes to completing missions swiftly. Hours earlier, beneath a calm, clear sky, a large church stood in quiet solemnity. unaware that it was about to become the stage for a crucial turn of events. Inside, rows of figures in gray cloaks knelt in devout prayer, while a shadowy presence lingered silently behind them. Among them, a young paladin prayed with steady focus, until a sudden sensation made her pause and glance cautiously over her shoulder. The church doors burst open as Victor stumbled in, breathing heavily from his desperate run. Struggling for breath, he hesitantly asked if this was the sacred branch of the church. The paladin answered calmly, confirming it was, before inquiring what business had brought him there. Still catching his breath, Victor hurriedly explained that he carried something of great importance, entrusted to him by his young master. He added, with nervous urgency, that the evidence he held proved someone in the city was working with a dark sorcerer. The paladin's calm expression faltered, shifting to alarm. Her eyes widened in shock as Victor revealed more. Evidence tied to dark magic was no trivial matter. With urgency, she demanded to see the notebook he carried, already expecting danger within its pages. As soon as she held it, her suspicions were confirmed. The notebook gave off a faint but undeniable trace of dark energy. Her concern deepened further when her eyes caught sight of a sinister symbol scrawled on its cover. Before Victor could react, the paladin snatched the bag from his hands in one swift motion. With no hesitation, she reached inside, eager to uncover the truth. Victor froze in horror as she pulled out something far beyond his expectations. The severed head of the dark mage the church had long been hunting. The moment the paladin confirms the severed head, her expression hardens with fury. She declares that at last she has uncovered one of the leaders of Yulan Agito. Her anger burns, but so does her resolve. Rising to her feet, she demands to know who brought this evidence to the church. Not long after, she arrives at the battlefield, her gaze locking directly onto Damien. With a commanding voice, she asks if he is truly Damien Haxon. Damien calmly affirms his identity, standing tall beside Victor as he waits for her response. The paladin informs him that the church has received the evidence he provided. From this moment forward, she states, the matter will be handled directly by the church. Damien immediately assures her that he has no intention of interfering with the duties of the church. Whatever course of action they decide upon, especially regarding Cedric and Sebastian, he gives his full consent. Grateful for his cooperation, the paladin bows slightly, expressing her thanks with politeness. At that moment, Damien and Victor both understand that everything is proceeding exactly according to their plan. With the paladin's presence, their victory is all but sealed. The Holy Church is revered by the people as a symbol of mercy and kindness. But when it comes to dealing with heretics and demons, the Church's hand is unflinching and severe. Among its ranks, none embody this power more than the paladins, elite knights who carry out the sacred task of judgment. Damien feels a wave of relief. He now has the paladins standing at his side. With a strong, unwavering voice, the paladin addresses the soldiers and the citizens gathered around. She announces that the church has received undeniable proof that someone within the city has been collaborating with a dark sorcerer. The crowd erupts into anxious whispers, shocked at the revelation, each wondering who could be guilty of such treachery. With solemn disgust, the paladin declares that the church will take direct control over the city's governance until the traitors are identified and punished. Sebastian, visibly unsettled, raises his voice in protest. He argues that as governor, the city should remain under his authority. But the paladin cuts him off without hesitation, standing firmly before him and the gathered crowd. She declares that cleansing the land of heresy is not simply a task, but a divine command. Her words carry absolute authority. She reminds all present that the church's mandate transcends that of the kingdom itself. And without giving Sebastian room to argue further, she interrupts him sharply, making it clear, this is not the time for debate. It is the time to hold the guilty accountable. The paladin stands tall, her voice cutting through the chaos as she declares that Governor Sebastian and his royal soldiers are among the primary suspects. Murmurs of shock ripple through the crowd. unrest spreading like wildfire. But she does not stop there. Turning her gaze sharply, she points directly at Cedric, accusing him of harboring and aiding a dark sorcerer within the city. Then, once again, she turns to Sebastian, stating plainly that his open support of Cedric places him under suspicion as well. Sebastian's face twists in disbelief as he raises his voice, demanding if Cedric truly allied himself with a sorcerer. Cedric snaps back defensively, denying it outright and calling the accusations nothing but baseless slander. But the paladin remains unmoved. With calm certainty, she tells him he can deny all he likes, then reveals the decisive blow. The church already holds undeniable evidence. She lifts a small notebook into view, announcing that its contents detail Cedric's dealings with the sorcerer, complete with supplier names and meeting locations. At the sight of the book, Cedric's face drains of color. Quietly, he curses the dark sorcerer, furious that he had been foolish enough to record everything. Desperate, he tries to salvage the moment, pleading with those around him that he is innocent, insisting it is all a misunderstanding that can still be resolved peacefully. The paladin offers him no chance. With a commanding tone, she orders the soldiers to seize all those involved without exception. Her words ignite action instantly. Cries ring out as Cedric, Sebastian, and their allies are dragged away by force, some thrashing wildly in resistance, others begging in vain. Damien watches silently from the background. As Sebastian is escorted past, his eyes lock onto Damien's. Suspicion gnaws at him. Could all of this have been orchestrated from the very beginning? A cold panic grips him as the realization sinks in. Falling into the hands of the church may mean he never leaves alive. Meanwhile, Cedric, pulled along roughly by soldiers, leans toward Robert with a grim warning. He tells him the church will not stop at simple arrest. They will pile on charges until his execution is guaranteed, trial or not. Just then, a voice cuts through the air, calling Robert's name with force. The knight freezes, silent for a moment. Then, with a roar, he unleashes his power. His body erupts in a majestic blue aura as he gathers his strength. With blazing resolve, Robert declares he will not be captured so easily. If the church wants him, they will have to fight, because he will resist until the very end. Cedric bursts into laughter from where he's restrained, convinced that the chaos has finally begun. Yet Damien remains unmoving, watching with a cold, measured gaze. Robert lifts his enormous sword high and slams it into the ground with devastating force. The knight before him does not budge, her stance firm, not a step back taken. Robert's eyes widen in disbelief. How could she withstand such power without flinching? In the blink of an eye, she strikes back. Her blow is so swift, Robert cannot even react before his defenses are torn apart completely. Cedric's smug laughter dies instantly, his mouth hanging open in shock, while Damien watches silently, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. The knight raises her hand, blue flames igniting and dancing across her arm. Her voice echoes with divine authority as she declares that anyone who dares stand against the will of the Lord will find nothing but annihilation. A deep wound cuts across Robert's body, and his towering form collapses violently to the ground. She stands over him, her sacred aura burning brilliantly, a pillar of unwavering resolve. The crowd around her is struck silent, awed and terrified all at once. Her voice rings out again, commanding the battlefield. She announces that punishment will be carried out here and now, swift, merciless, and absolute. Rank, title, or power mean nothing in the face of divine law. She makes it clear, this is the Lord's judgment, and no mercy will be extended to those who have fallen into corruption. Cedric lies bound, his body slumped in humiliation, everything he built reduced to ruins. Outside, Sebastian thrashes wildly, screaming and cursing as knights drag him away, demanding his release in a frenzy of desperation. From a distance, Damien and Victor watch, their smiles quiet but telling. They remark that this broken man before them is truly the leader of the Black Serpent Gang. though nothing about his current appearance suggests danger. But Cedric is seething, his rage boiling over. His eyes blaze as he stares at Damien, consumed with fury at the undeniable truth. All of this downfall is because of him. Damien, however, turns calmly to the Holy Knight, offering his gratitude. He tells her that thanks to her intervention, the mission has advanced and concluded exactly as planned. As his eyes linger on her, he discerns something profound in the purity of her energy. He realizes she is no ordinary knight. She is a member of the fabled Azure Flame Division. Damien's mind drifts briefly to the legacy of the Azure Flame Division, one of the 5 most feared units of the Church. Their name alone evokes terror. Known for their ruthless efficiency, they are infamous for purging heresy without hesitation, even when suspicion is faint. Their reputation is written in blood. The knight fixes her gaze on Damien, calling his name with firm composure. She praises him for striking down one of the senior officers of the Yolan organization. Damien answers without arrogance, simply stating that he only did what he felt was right. The knight shakes her head slightly, telling him his actions are far greater than he admits. Because of what he has done, she adds, he will not be held accountable for the events that unfolded in the city today. Damien lets a quiet smile slip across his face, pretending not to understand her meaning. But the knight is not deceived. She speaks plainly. She knows he deliberately drew the Church into this affair, using their presence as a cover for his assault, and that every move he made was deliberate. Damien offers a polite apology if his plan has caused her trouble, explaining that he only acted this way because a dark sorcerer had threatened his family. The knight's eyes widen at that. Her steady demeanor falters, concern flashing across her face as the weight of his words sinks in. After a moment of contemplation, she declares that under such circumstances, Damien will face no punishment whatsoever. More than that, she adds, the bounty placed on the dark sorcerer's head will be awarded to him in full. Damien blinks in surprise. He hadn't even been aware that such a bounty existed. He asks how much it is, and the knight replies without hesitation, 1,000 gold. Victor nearly bursts with excitement. Wide-eyed, he exclaims that such a fortune could buy a small castle. He can hardly contain his joy, but Damien remains thoughtful. His heart isn't set on gold. What he wants from the Church lies elsewhere. With a small smile, he asks the paladin if it would be possible to request something other than the bounty. Victor, meanwhile, fumes inwardly. After all the wealth the young master has burned through already, now he dares to refuse 1,000 gold? The thought alone leaves him seething. The knight presses him, asking what he truly seeks. Damien replies without hesitation. He wants the mana cultivation technique used by the Church's knights. The request startles her. Someone who had managed to defeat a dark sorcerer shouldn't be asking for something so basic, or so she thought. Inwardly, Damien recalls that battle. He knows it wasn't his own strength that won the day, but divine intervention. Such fortune wouldn't repeat itself against future enemies. Miracles aren't something he can rely on. The only path forward is to sharpen his own power through proper training. The crude mana technique he picked up back when he was just a mercenary has carried him far, but it can't take him beyond a beginner's limits. That's why he needs something real, an advanced method worthy of his growth. Hearing this, the Holy Knight studies him closely. The fact that he has come this far using only the most basic techniques astonishes her. She focuses on his aura and immediately notices his body already holds far more energy than most his age. Clearly, his gift isn't only in strength, but in sheer determination as well. Then, instead of answering his request, she offers something else entirely, something greater. With a calm smile, she stretches out her hand and presents him with an opportunity few could even dream of, the chance to become a holy knight. The air stills. Damien meets her gaze in silence, his expression steady. Beside him, Victor stiffens in shock, unable to believe what he's seeing. Yet Damien breaks the silence with a firm refusal. He steps back, rejecting her offer outright. Victor is left speechless. He leans in, whispering urgently, demanding to know why his master would turn down such an honor after triumphing over a foe so powerful. The knight's expression hardens as she explains. A holy knight is more than just a title. It's a sacred duty, the authority to strike down evil in the name of divine justice. Such a role is rarely bestowed and never easily earned. Damien listens but remains unsettled. Deep inside, he knows the truth. He refuses to live bound to the church like an obedient hound. But that truth can't be spoken aloud. So, he steadies himself, clears his throat, and delivers a solemn excuse, disguising his rejection as humility. With a formal stance, he tells her that he is unworthy, that he does not yet deserve the love of God. Damien continues his act, saying that for now, he only wishes to wander the world, following the traces of the divine as a simple devotee. To him, the life feels flawless. He imagines himself appearing saintly. Yet Victor, watching from the side, wonders in disbelief if his master truly thinks such a flimsy excuse could possibly fool anyone a second time. The knight lowers her head slightly, lost in thought at his words. Then, with sudden delight, she clasps Damien's hands and declares with joy that what he said is sacred. She seems deeply moved, while Damien internally wonders if his gamble has truly worked this time. Keeping her promise, the knight tells him she will provide a mana cultivation technique instead of money. With a gentle smile, she adds that if he ever reconsiders, she will gladly welcome him. Before parting, she makes a small personal request. Damien agrees with a smile, hiding his quiet apology to himself, swearing he won't let such a troublesome situation repeat. Only then does she realize they haven't formally introduced themselves. She gives her name, Agnes, top disciple of the Azure Flame Brigade. Damien is startled to learn her status, but quickly masks it with a smile, saying it's an honor to meet her. He then politely asks for her leave, explaining he has something personal to handle. Agnes consents, though curiosity lingers in her voice as she asks what it is he intends to do. Nearby, Cedric turns with unease, his movements hesitant and his nerves on edge. When his eyes meet Damien's stern gaze, panic twists into rage. He bursts out in fury, hurling insults while shouting at the top of his lungs. Damien doesn't flinch. He steps forward and drives a solid punch into Cedric's gut. The blow knocks Cedric to the ground, his body curling in pain. Damien looks down with a mocking smile, remarking that Cedric's thick fat probably cushioned his bones. Without hesitation, he strikes again, this time slamming his fist into Cedric's face. The sheer force sends Cedric flying, crashing into the dirt, left groaning and powerless. With that, Damien exhales deeply, ending the assault. He presses a hand to his chest, a look of satisfaction washing over him. Victor steps closer, speaking quietly, almost hesitant, and asks if this is truly the end. Damien gives a short reply, his gaze fixed on the horizon. Calmly, he affirms it's over. Meanwhile, at the Leon Bloom estate, chaos erupts. Marquis Holland storms inside, panic written all over him as he calls for his son. He finds Erwin locked away in his room, trembling and cowering in fear. The moment Erwin sees his father, his panic deepens. Holland seizes his son by the shoulders, torn between anger and shock, demanding to know what has happened to leave him in such a pitiful state. Through ragged breaths and a quivering voice, Erwin stammers out his explanation. Someone tried to kill him. He shakes violently as he speaks, forcing out the words. That his attacker didn't use a knife but a fork. Holland stares in disbelief at the absurdity of it. His temper explodes. He roars at one of the guards, demanding a full account. The guard falters, hesitant to answer, until Holland's furious shout forces the truth out. The guard finally blurts it clearly. The attacker was Damien Haxon, son of Viscount Haxon. The words ignite Holland's fury. In a fit of rage, he hurls a vase across the room, shattering it into pieces against the floor. His voice shakes with wrath as he curses Damien, denouncing him for daring to harm his son with such underhanded methods. Enraged beyond control, he orders messengers to be sent immediately to the Haxon estate. His command is clear. Damien must be dragged before him like a beast. The next morning, tension hangs over the Haxon estate. At the entrance, Agnes steps forward and introduces herself as a paladin of the church, with two knights standing firmly behind her. Damien's parents appear, uneasy but respectful, greeting her with strained politeness. The Viscount feels the weight of unease pressing down on him, well aware of the chaos his son has stirred inside and outside their household. He tries to ease the moment, explaining that Damien had mentioned Agnes would be staying with them for some time. Agnes confirms this, stating that her presence is tied to an official investigation into heresy, and she requests the family's full cooperation. Hesitant, the Viscount admits that their home is modest and may not have a room fitting for her status. Agnes responds with kindness, offering him a symbolic gift from the church as a sign of appreciation for their hospitality. Grateful yet burdened, the Viscount accepts, the weight of the situation settling even heavier upon him. Agnes expresses her gratitude once more, thanking the Viscount for allowing the investigation to be conducted within their estate. Damien, however, looks a little uneasy. He admits he hadn't expected her duties to involve staying inside their home. With a gentle tone, Agnes asks Damien if she may look into something beyond her official mission. Curious, Damien asks what matter she means. Smiling, she tells him it's something personal, concerning him directly. At that moment, both his parents freeze in shock. Misunderstanding completely, they glance at each other proudly, certain this is about a romantic affair. His father even flashes him a thumbs up. Mortified, Damien leans toward his father and whispers that it isn't at all what they think. Agnes then presents him with two books. She explains that these are the mana cultivation techniques he had requested, both carefully chosen for him. Damien, stunned, asks aloud why there are two books when he had only asked for one. Agnes clarifies, the first contains a sword technique, the second a cultivation method. She tells him that giving him only one wouldn't have been enough, so she included both. The titles are revealed, Destructive Sword Technique and Destructive Energy Technique. Agnes explains that obtaining them wasn't simple. She faced strong resistance within the church before managing to bring them. Damien acknowledges her effort with sincere words of appreciation, recognizing the lengths she went to on his behalf. Agnes then admits something more. She had to invoke her teacher's authority to make it possible. When she described Damien to her master, he declared that Damien was exactly the kind of chosen one the church needed. Reaching out again, Agnes takes his hands and softly asks if, after this, he would reconsider becoming a paladin. But Damien gently pulls away, apologizing. Agnes only smiles, assuring him she won't press the matter further. She reminds him that he has complete freedom, and if he ever changes his mind, she will welcome him. After she departs, Damien's face tightens with unease, tension weighing heavily over him. Damien stands tense, his thoughts sharpening into clarity. Now he understands. Agnes is no ordinary knight of faith. She's a true fanatic, her obsession with the church evident in everything she does. Far away, in a secluded forest, the mouth of a hidden cave yawns open, shadowed and ominous. Within its depths, two cloaked figures stand in quiet conversation. One addresses the other as senior and voices his unease. Something doesn't feel right, he says. He points out the strangeness of recent events, questioning how Agito, one of the Yolan organization's leaders, could be taken down so easily. Agito may not have been the strongest in combat, but even so, the idea of him falling to a minor country noble seems absurd. His companion nods, admitting the same doubts. Still, he notes that Agnes herself has offered no comment on the matter. The first insists they should at least bring it up once, but the other advises focusing on their investigation for now. Before the debate can continue, Agnes suddenly steps into the cave, her voice steady and commanding. She assures them both that Damien Haxon is someone they can trust completely. Startled by her sudden appearance, the two men fall silent, listening closely as she speaks with conviction. She acknowledges their doubts, but insists that Damien has never once lied to them. One of the men pushes back, still unable to comprehend how Damien could have possibly killed Agito? Agnes raises her brows at the question, almost surprised, and reminds them she has already explained it. According to her, Damien simply evaded Agito's strike before ending him with a clean cut to the throat. Her voice carries into a flashback. Agnes recalls her own skepticism when she first heard the tale from Damien's servant. Rather than intervening, she chose to wait and see, keeping a close eye on the city. What she witnessed silenced her doubts. She saw Damien facing hordes of enemies alone, walking away untouched, cutting them all down without so much as a mark on him. Even more shocking, she recounts, he stood his ground against a fireball spell, blocking it entirely and emerging unharmed. The two men stare, dumbfounded. They whisper among themselves, wondering if such defense is even possible. Agnes answers firmly that it is. A true sword master, she explains, is said to be able to deflect anything, even spells. While Damien is not a sword master, his ability, she stresses, is undeniable. His talent is far beyond ordinary, and it cannot be overlooked. Agnes shifts the discussion back to her true purpose. She explains that while she is indeed tracking the Yulan organization, she also intends to bring Damien before her teacher. She urges the two men to set aside their doubts and stay focused on the investigation at hand. Convinced by her conviction, they nod, moved by her words, and return to their work within the cave. The scene changes. Hooves thunder steadily across a dirt road, kicking up dust as a group of knights ride in formation beneath the banner of House Lionbloom. Their advance is precise, confident, a military display of discipline. Among them, a young trainee named Alpus throws up his hands in excitement, declaring they've finally arrived. Another knight comments on a strange odor drifting in the air, and their companion Lavender jokes, saying it must be the scent of picnics, something peasants would understand, but not them. Their chatter is cut short when the leading knight snaps at them to keep quiet, grumbling as he asks if anyone has perfume to mask the unpleasant smell. The man at the front, Garrick of House Lion Bloom, is revealed. His face is stern, hardened, filled with resolve. As the company halts before the Haxon estate, Garrick narrows his eyes and asks if this is truly the home of Viscount Haxon. A knight confirms, and Garrick presses further, inquiring about their mission from the Marquis. The knight responds clearly. It is to capture Damien Haxon. Garrick's lips curl into a cold line. With a firm, chilling voice, he declares that capturing Damien will be simple, but that alone will not erase the humiliation dealt to young Erwin and the Lionbloom family. At that moment, an old man slowly approaches the group, leaning heavily on his cane. Garrick watches him silently, eyes sharp, unmoving. One of the knights sneers, barking rudely at him, "Hey, old man." Startled, the elder turns, his face pale with fear. He stammers out a question, asking who they are. The knight's towering figures cast threatening shadows over him as one demands to know if he is a resident of the Haxon estate. Trembling, the old man admits he is and asks why they want to know. Without warning, one of the knights strikes him violently, slamming his head to the ground. Garrick's voice follows, filled with seething anger. He scorns the man, shouting how dare a mere villager under a viscount's rule fail to bow before the emblem of House Lionbloom. Garrick warns that showing disrespect to the Lionbloom family is a grave offense that demands severe punishment. Turning to his knights, Lavender and Alpus, he calls their names, and both answer swiftly with absolute respect. A sly grin forms on Garrick's face as he tells them he has a plan in mind. His gaze shifts toward the Viscount's mansion, and he declares that when they arrive, they'll drag Damien Hashin out themselves. Victor's expression turns to pure shock, unable to believe what he's hearing. Garrick's voice hardens as he adds that anyone daring to resist will be cut down without hesitation. Meanwhile, in another place, 3 cloaked figures are leaving the cave they had just searched. One of them voices disappointment, frustrated that the collapse prevented them from gaining the information they sought. Still, she acknowledges their effort, saying their work has been sufficient. Suddenly, one of the knights halts, sensing something unusual. The group turns their eyes toward Damien, who sits in silence, fully absorbed in his training. A vivid blue aura surrounds him, pulsing with energy as he cultivates mana through a technique he has only recently acquired. Agnes's eyes widen as she watches, unable to believe what she's seeing. Inwardly, she recalls that the technique she entrusted to Damien was meant to push him to his absolute limits. Yet, what unfolds before her leaves her astonished. His progress is far greater than she expected in such a short span. After a while, Damien becomes aware of their presence, noticing the admiration written all over their faces. He turns to Agnes and asks if their investigation is finished. She replies, hesitantly, that it is. Then, addressing him directly, she remarks on the progress he seems to have made. Damien answers with a smile, humbly saying it's only a little. His eyes then settle on the book he's been using in his training, and his thoughts turn inward. The paladin hadn't lied. The book was indeed difficult to obtain. Yet to him, sword techniques mean nothing. After all, in his past life, he had already mastered the sword to its peak. Damien reflects that while sword techniques no longer matter to him, this cultivation method is invaluable. The destructive energy technique was crafted to balance the immense mana drain of the destructive sword style. Because of that, it gathers mana faster than most methods and even absorbs energy from the outside. Standing in silence before Paladin Agnes, Damien meets her gaze. Neither of them speaks, their eyes locked in an intense stillness. Realizing how awkward the moment has become, Damien finally breaks it, remarking that it's already late and dinner should be ready. He suggests they head back together. But in that very instant, a surge of bloodlust washes over him from the direction of the estate. His expression sharpens, and he tells Agnes that vermin have arrived. Confused, Agnes asks what he means. Damien quickly apologizes, saying he has urgent business to handle, and urges her to follow at her own pace. Without another word, he bursts forward at blinding speed, leaving Agnes and her knight frozen in shock. Agnes watches him vanish in the distance, unable to believe how fast he moved. The knight beside her voices the same disbelief, stunned by Damien's raw speed. Agnes wonders quietly how he can achieve such movement with so little mana expenditure. Could he truly be controlling it with that much precision? As she ponders, another thought creeps in. Just how high is the ceiling of his abilities? Meanwhile, at the Haxon residence, chaos has already erupted. A knight from House Lion Bloom strikes Victor with devastating force, sending him crashing to the ground. The attacker stands tall and smug, arrogance radiating from his posture as Victor lies battered at his feet. The knight bellows furiously, stomping on Victor again and again. He calls him a filthy dog and demands to know how he dares defy him. Ordering Victor to obey, he commands him to drag Damien Hashin out of the house immediately. Despite the pain, Victor shouts back with defiance, refusing outright, and crying out that these knights only wish to harm his young master, Damien. One of the servants, desperate, yells for help, calling for Viscount Paul Haxon and pointing him toward the brutal scene. The Viscount rushes over, his voice booming as he orders everyone to stop at once. He arrives before the knights, his face etched with both anger and worry, and immediately kneels beside Victor, pulling the wounded man into his arms. With fury, he demands to know how they dare attack a mere civilian in such a cruel way. But Garrick steps forward, his tone like ice, declaring that their actions are nothing compared to the insult House Lionbloom has endured. Then, fixing his gaze directly on the Viscount, Garrick delivers his demand. Hand over Damien Hashin, as ordered by Marquis Lionbloom. If they surrender the boy peacefully, he says, their land will remain untouched. Inside, the Viscount seethes, outraged at the savage and dishonorable methods employed by the Blum family. Garrick, however, sneers, thinking to himself that his promise of safety is nothing but a ruse. If Damien were surrendered, he would burn the estate to ashes regardless. Paul Haxon rises with resolve, his voice unyielding. He declares that no matter the threat, he will never hand over his son. Garrick narrows his eyes and asks darkly if the Viscount is certain of that choice. Without hesitation, Paul answers that he is. Snarling, Garrick gives the command for his men to tear down everything until Damien shows himself. The Viscount roars in outrage, screaming at them to stop, panic mixing with the fury in his eyes. But then, before anyone can move further, a sudden shadow streaks across the ground. Something, or rather someone, is approaching at blinding speed. The knights freeze, startled by the overwhelming presence. Garrick spins around, sensing the power closing in fast, and mutters to himself in confusion. Within moments, Damien steps forward calmly. Garrick turns, his rage boiling over, and demands to know who dares stand before him. But then, as his eyes lock on the figure, Garrick falters, shock freezing him in place. The realization of who has arrived leaves him utterly stunned. Garrick stands frozen in place, his body refusing to move as he stares at Damien, who remains firm and unshaken before him. Damien immediately kneels beside his father, asking with genuine concern if he's unharmed. The Viscount assures him he's fine, but his voice carries worry as he points out Victor's condition. Turning his gaze to Victor, Damien's expression hardens, his seriousness clear as he takes in the sight of his injured servant. Then, addressing the knights, his voice turns cold and sharp. He tells them they don't even realize how fortunate they are. If Victor hadn't been strong enough to endure that assault, he might have been killed on the spot. And if that had happened, Damien would have beaten them to death without a second thought. Garrick answers with mockery, scoffing that Damien is nothing more than the Viscount's worthless son. He accuses him of arrogance, claiming his victory over Erwin was nothing but a cheap trick. Damien lets out a sarcastic smirk and repeats the words slowly. A cheap trick, making it clear just how little he cares for Garrick's taunts. Snapping, Garrick orders his knights to shatter Damien's legs and force him to kneel before him. The knights surge forward to obey, but Damien doesn't panic. He moves calmly, almost effortlessly. With precise timing, he sidesteps one knight's attack and mutters to himself that this is the perfect moment to test the mana technique he's just mastered. In an instant, he seizes the knight's arm with crushing strength and follows with a devastating punch infused with energy. The knight howls in agony. Before another can even react, Damien launches a counterattack at blinding speed, driving a fierce kick into the knight's body. The impact sends him flying across the ground, unconscious before he even lands. Garrick's eyes flicker with surprise at Damien's overwhelming strength, but he pushes forward regardless. Meanwhile, Victor, barely conscious, opens his eyes and glances at Damien. His voice is weak and strained as he asks after his young master's condition. Damien quickly looks his way, his tone filled with concern, asking if he's all right. Despite his injuries, Victor forces a faint smile and raises his thumb, reassuring Damien that he's still holding on. Damien allows a quiet smile to form as he looks ahead, his thoughts confirming what he already knew. Victor is truly remarkable. Garrick stepped closer, now standing directly in front of Damien. For the first time, doubt creeps into his mind as he questions whether Erwin's defeat had really been nothing more than a so-called cheap trick. Garrick's eyes fall on his fallen knight, disbelief clear in his voice as he mutters that he cannot understand how someone like Damien, labeled a failure, could wield such skill in combat. Damien meets his words with an icy tone, replying that Garrick doesn't need to know the answer. A sly smile creeps across Garrick's face. He suddenly claims he has figured it out. Pointing straight at Damien, he declares with absolute confidence that the man before him is not the real Damien. Both Victor and the Viscount show visible confusion, while Damien himself narrows his eyes, baffled by Garrick's irrational outburst. Garrick's voice rises, shouting accusations. He calls Damien an imposter, a fraud planted only to defeat Erwin and disgrace House Lionbloom. His rant grows louder, insisting this is a scheme fueled by those who despise the Marquis, a conspiracy meant solely to bring shame to their name. He brands Damien a substitute and vows that he will pay dearly for daring to insult his house. Damien thinks to himself with contempt that Garrick is even more foolish than he imagined, utterly hopeless. One night, still sprawled on the ground, makes the decision to feign unconsciousness, desperate to avoid being dragged back into the fight. Meanwhile, the Viscount, still seated on the ground, calls out with resolve, urging his son to prevail. Garrick tightens his grip on his sword, preparing to face Damien head-on. Damien doesn't move, standing firm and composed, his eyes locked on his opponent. As Garrick glares at him with burning intensity, he convinces himself that while Damien has been lucky until now, this will be his end. With a step forward, Garrick resolves to finish at the moment Damien is in range. Like a thunderclap, he launches forward, his mind set on ending the fight in an instant, certain he will cut Damien in half with a single devastating strike. His sword slashes forward at full speed, only to be met by Damien's blade. The clash rings out as Damien blocks with ease, barely strained by the force. A confident smile crosses his lips as he confirms what he suspected. House Lionbloom has finally sent a true knight against him. Garrick grits his teeth and charges again, unleashing his full strength in another ferocious attack. Yet Damien remains calm, unflinching, waiting with complete composure as the knight barrels toward him. Garrick's eyes widen in disbelief as Damien effortlessly parries his powerful strike. Enraged, he roars and swings down with even greater force, daring Damien to block again. But Damien stops the attack with ease, his voice calm and sharp as he remarks that Garrick is simply too slow. Garrick's face twists in shock, unable to grasp the speed and strength Damien suddenly displays. Before he can react further, Damien steps forward and declares that it's his turn to attack. In a blur, he moves with lightning speed and lands a crushing blow that makes Garrick cry out in pain. Garrick reels backward, stunned that he never even saw the strike coming. Without hesitation, Damien follows up with a brutal kick, slamming directly into Garrick and sending him crashing violently to the ground. Garrick groans, completely unable to defend against the assault. Standing tall, Damien tells him coldly that the attack is repayment for what he did to Victor. Struggling, Garrick drags himself up, his body shaking with anger and humiliation. He lets out a furious scream and charges again, vowing to tear Damien apart. But Damien remains collected, quietly announcing that it's time to use his secret technique. Garrick unleashes his own trump card, shouting the name of his technique, Great Lion's Rapid Blade, as the sword blurs in a rush of overwhelming strikes. The ground shakes with his fury, yet Damien brushes it aside, his tone cold and dismissive, calling it nothing but meaningless noise. With almost effortless control, he deflects Garrick's furious blows and shatters the knight's blade into fragments. Garrick's eyes go wide in despair as his weapon breaks. Before he can recover, Damien strikes with blinding speed, his sword piercing into Garrick's shoulder. In an instant, Garrick's right arm is severed, his scream of agony echoing through the air as he collapses violently to the ground. The Viscount stares in stunned silence, unable to believe what he has just witnessed. Victor, despite his injuries, shouts in triumph, thrusting his fist high and declaring Damien the victor. Damien turns his gaze back to Garrick, his expression sharp and filled with killing intent. Garrick writhes on the ground, clutching at his wound, cursing in pain and groaning that he needs pressure to stop the bleeding. The sharp tip of a sword hovers inches from Garrick's face, making him tremble with terror. His composure shatters, and he begins begging frantically for mercy. He insists he doesn't even know who Damien truly is, pleading desperately for forgiveness. Damien answers coldly, his voice cutting like steel. He repeats firmly that he is Damien Haxon and calls Garrick a fool. Looking down at him with disdain, Damien says that if Garrick truly wanted to beg, he should have done so long ago. Now it's far too late. His tone grows sharper as he accuses Garrick of daring to harm his family, of humiliating his servant by further disfiguring his already battered face. And now, after all of that, Damien asks mockingly if Garrick still thinks he can beg for mercy. Garrick stares up in shock at Damien's merciless words. His pleas grow even more pitiful, his voice cracking as he begs again and again for forgiveness. But Damien's eyes remain cold. He tells him bluntly that he still doesn't even know who he should be apologizing to. The sound of footsteps echoes across the courtyard, making Garrick stiffen in dread. To his horror, Victor appears, battered but still standing, alongside Viscount Paul Haxon. Both surround him with intimidating stares, pressing Garrick into panic. Victor wastes no time, unleashing his rage with more blows, while even the Viscount joins in to deliver his own measure of justice. Soon, Garrick is reduced to the ground alongside his surviving knights, each one battered, broken, and drowning in fear. Victor turns to Damien, asking if he should strike Garrick a few more times. But Damien raises a hand and orders him to stop, remarking that if they continued, Garrick might not survive. Instead, Damien adds with dark humor that cutting off one of Garrick's limbs could be another option, words that make Garrick quake in horror. The Viscount steps forward, placing a firm hand on his son's shoulder, his voice steady. He tells Damien that what he has done is already more than enough. Garrick collapses, his pride shattered, groveling on the ground as he begs for his life. His voice is hoarse as he repeatedly apologizes to both Damien and the Viscount. But Paul Haxon rejects his words with fury, shouting that an apology can never erase what has been done. If Damien hadn't possessed such overwhelming strength, their home would have been destroyed and his son dragged away like a prisoner to the Blum estate. Crushed, Garrick lowers himself until his forehead presses against the dirt, begging again for mercy and pardon. The Viscount looks down at the pathetic figure, silent and unreadable, lost in thought. Finally, he turns his gaze toward Damien, his expression asking the unspoken question, what should be done with him now? Standing quietly behind his father, Damien keeps his composure while his thoughts race. He admits to himself that he never intended to kill Garrick. If he were to slay the Knights of House Lion Bloom here, it would drag relations with the Marquis to their worst possible state. Damien knows he could fight them all alone if he had to, but he cannot ignore the consequences that would fall on his family. Still, letting them walk away unscathed doesn't sit right with him either. He knows too well they would only come back seeking revenge, leaving him caught in a difficult dilemma. Just then, a familiar voice cuts through the tension. Agnes calls his name firmly, drawing his attention at once. Turning, Damien sees her approaching in a rush. Relief sweeps over him. Her presence could be the very key he needs to resolve this situation. He explains what has transpired, and Agnes listens with understanding. Then, with a calm smile, she tells him she knows exactly how to solve this. She steps closer, speaking with gratitude. Thanks to the Viscount and his family, she says they have succeeded for the first time in defeating one of the leaders of the Yulan organization. Damien's eyes widen at her words, surprised by the weight of her statement. Agnes then declares that with such cooperation, the Haxon family will now be recognized as an official partner of the church. Behind them, Victor turns to the Viscount, his voice trembling with hope as he asks if this means their family might finally escape their looming crisis. Both father and servant show renewed light in their eyes. Damien seizes the moment, stepping closer to Agnes and politely asking if he may request her help with something further. Internally, he smiles. This is precisely what he had aimed for all along, securing the protection of the church. Agnes, caught off guard by his sudden closeness, flusters slightly and takes a step back with an apologetic gesture. Turning back toward the defeated knights, Damien's expression hardens. He speaks clearly, asking if they have understood the words just spoken, that House Haxon now stands under the church's protection. Garrick, trembling and pale, mutters that Damien himself should go tell Marquis Lion Bloom that truth. But Damien doesn't stop there. His voice is cold and steady as he warns them that if House Lion Bloom dares to use force again, they will face the wrath of the church itself. Then, with unshakable firmness, he orders them to leave at once. The knights scramble to their feet in a panic, bowing their heads and nervously thanking Damien for sparing them as they flee the estate in fear. Victor scoffs at them, mocking how they ran away in fear like frightened dogs. But before he can continue, Damien's father cuts in, reminding everyone that their troubles are far from over despite the retreat. The Viscount wastes no time and insists they hold a formal discussion on their next move. Soon after, the family assembles in the manor's conference room, where Viscount Hacken officially begins the meeting. Louise is the first to speak, making it clear that the agenda is how to handle the growing conflict with House Leon Blum. Abel, confused, asks why they should even bother when they're already under the church's protection. Louise quickly corrects him, explaining that the church won't step in to directly resolve such disputes. Viscount Paul Haxon supports her point, stressing that the church never meddles in feuds between noble families, and that House Leon Blum's influence isn't just military, it's overwhelming. He warns that they could easily crush smaller houses like theirs if they wished. Agnes then outlines their choices: either pay reparations or find protection by allying with a stronger noble house. But before anyone can settle on that, she interrupts with another possibility. With excitement, Agnes reveals her proposal. Damien should become a holy knight of the church. The room falls silent at her unexpected suggestion, broken only when Damien refuses outright. Viscount Paul immediately declares the matter closed, saying it cannot be forced if Damien does not agree. But Abel leaps to his feet, shouting at his father in frustration. When asked what he wants, Abel explodes, furious that his father dismissed the idea so easily. He demands to know why they aren't considering it seriously, since it could resolve all their troubles at once. Abel then sneers at Damien, mocking him and laughing that all he needs to do is accept becoming a holy knight. But just as his laughter echoes through the hall, Abel freezes. An overwhelming, terrifying energy rises behind him, making him whip around in shock. The Viscount calmly reminds him they have guests and orders him to show proper respect. Abel sits back down with a dissatisfied grunt, joining the rest of the family at the table. Damien's father then addresses the room, admitting that Abel is right. Damien's actions did spark this conflict with the Mars family. But he firmly adds that the fault does not rest on Damien alone. Damien's mother keeps the discussion moving, explaining that the Mars family's second son had always set his sights on Louise. Even if Damien hadn't stood up to him, that man would never have backed down easily. Viscount Hacken then adds that Damien actually protected his sister from that man's schemes, something even he, as her father, had been powerless to do. Turning to his son, the Viscount calls Damien's name in a calm and steady tone. Damien immediately responds with respect. Yes, father, waiting to hear what comes next. To his surprise, his father commends him, saying he did well today. He praises Damien for not tolerating the insult against their family and for standing up for them as he should. Hearing these words, Damien is caught off guard. He had never realized his father saw his actions in that light. Collecting himself, he replies that he only did what he believed was necessary. His father reassures him, promising that from this point on, he will personally take charge of the situation. Damien tries to argue against it, but his father silences him, insisting that he allow him this chance to act as a proper father, if only once. Just then, a servant rushes into the room, bowing and apologizing as he addresses the Viscount. He reports that someone from the ducal house of Gold Pixie has arrived and wishes to see him. Shocked, the Viscount asks why anyone from such a house would come to them. The envoy steps forward nervously and explains the reason. It concerns Damien. He had borrowed money and used the Viscount's wheat fields as collateral, and the deadline for repayment has already passed. Damien's heart sinks, anxiety washing over him. He berates himself inwardly, wondering if the fields have already been taken. He freezes as his father suddenly calls his name in a furious tone. Moments ago, he was praised, but now the Viscount's anger erupts, raging that Damien is always causing problems. His furious voice booms through the manor, calling Damien a damn brat, loud enough for those outside to hear. The envoy then removes his hat, greeting Damien directly with a polite smile. "Ah, Sir Damien," he says, "a good day to you." Damien stares at the man, trying to place his face. Slowly, the memory comes back. Olin Dinosaur, the West Branch manager of Dash and Cash, greets him with a calm smile, saying it's been some time since their last meeting and reminding him that today is the repayment date they agreed upon. As Olin speaks, Damien recalls how he was persuaded into this mess. He remembers how Olin convinced him to put up the family's land as collateral, assuring him that it was the only way to borrow a larger sum. He had said it was nothing but a formality, that there was no risk at all, even laughing as he claimed, "How could someone like me ever take land from a noble like you?" Every word had been carefully chosen, every assurance dripping with false sincerity. Damien clenches his teeth, cursing his past self with a twisted smile, wondering why he ever handed over the deed in the first place. Shoving those thoughts aside, he asks bluntly how much he owes. With a mocking grin, Olin answers. The borrowed amount was 200 gold coins, but with interest, it now stands at 300. Damien freezes, shocked by the number. He can't even recall why he borrowed so much, only that his family could never hope to gather that kind of money. A wave of dread washes over him as he imagines them cast out, their lives destroyed by this crushing debt. Olin explains coldly that if the payment isn't made today, the collateral will be seized. The land will officially belong to House Gold Pixie. Enraged, Damien demands to know why Olin had promised the collateral was just a formality. But Olin only smirks, telling him he doesn't really have a choice. The order from House Gold Pixie is absolute. All debts must be collected, whether from nobles or commoners. Pressing further, Olin warns Damien to hand over the money if he understands what's at stake, though he clearly suspects he doesn't have it. Looking Damien straight in the eye, he asks if he can pay. Damien answers evenly, admitting he hasn't been able to raise the amount. Feigning sympathy, Olin smiles cunningly and says he understands perfectly. Then, without shame, he drops into a sofa, lounging arrogantly as though he owned the place, his eyes full of disdain for Damien who stands before him. With mockery in his voice, he remarks that Damien never should have borrowed money he couldn't repay. Then, with a smirk, he snaps his fingers. His guards move instantly at the signal. "Since you can't pay," Olin sneers, "I'll have to use the method I know best to collect." The two guards step up behind Damien, their heavy presence pressing down on him, clearly meant to intimidate. Olin Dinosaur, watching it all unfold, admits inwardly that he had never expected Damien to pay back the debt. That was never the real goal. What he truly craves is the sight of arrogant nobles brought low, begging before him. The thought excites him, and he can't help but wonder what kind of expression Damien will make now, cornered and facing danger. Just imagining it sends chills down his spine. Meanwhile, in another part of the estate, the rest of the family waits anxiously. The Viscount paces aimlessly, consumed with worry, while Abel stands in the corner, deep in thought. Damien's mother urges her husband to sit down and rest, warning that his stress might cause him to collapse. Louise echoes her, asking Abel to calm himself and take a seat as well. But the Viscount only grows more agitated. He refuses to sit, demanding how he possibly can when their family teeters on the brink of collapse. Abel raises his voice too, agreeing with his father, shouting that there's no way they can remain calm with disaster looming over them. Damien's mother, however, tells them both to settle down and place their trust in Damien. She reminds them that he has always found a way through every crisis. The Viscount shakes his head anxiously, insisting that Damien's survival so far has only been thanks to his combat abilities. But this, he emphasizes, is different. Combat and negotiation are worlds apart. Just then, a thunderous crash echoes through the manor. The family turns in shock. Back in the room, Damien stands over the fallen body of one of the guards, leaving Olin completely stunned. Damien, his voice laced with sarcasm, remarks that his father will surely scold him harshly for resorting to violence. The remaining guard, enraged, charges at Damien with his weapon raised high. But Damien moves with blinding speed, blocking the attack in an instant. He seizes the guard by the face, his grip so crushing that the man screams in agony. Lifting him effortlessly, Damien remarks coldly that when a guard dares to raise a weapon against a noble, defending oneself is only natural. A chilling smile spreads across Damien's face as he stands before the envoy, who sits frozen in shock. The envoy lets out a panicked scream, scrambling backward on the sofa in a desperate attempt to escape. Damien moves toward him slowly and silently, his calm steps only heightening the envoy's terror. When Damien finally speaks, his voice is steady. He tells the envoy to get on his knees. Terrified, the envoy obeys instantly without hesitation. Damien then explains that he cannot repay the debt in coin, causing the envoy to shift nervously. But Damien doesn't stop there. He adds that he intends to repay the debt in another way. With a bright smile that contrasts the menace in his tone, Damien asks if it's acceptable to settle the debt through something other than money. The envoy, rattled and confused by Damien's unpredictable demeanor, quickly agrees, desperate to avoid further confrontation. The next morning, the sky above the manor is clear, signaling the start of a new chapter. Inside, Abel speaks to his father, his voice heavy with sorrow. Concerned, his father asks what troubles him. Abel explains bitterly that justice has once again fallen to violence, and it eats away at him. Meanwhile, Damien's mother and sister offer him words of caution as he prepares to leave. Damien reassures them with confidence, promising he will return safely and telling them not to worry. Abel suddenly bursts out in protest, frustrated, but his father immediately scolds him, telling him to stop spouting nonsense and instead encourage his brother on his long journey. Inwardly, the Viscount admits he has no real choice but to go along with this plan, even if he remains unsure whether it will truly succeed. Agnes then steps forward to speak with Damien. Calmly, she apologizes for their parting. Damien thanks her for all the help she has given, but she insists she only did what was right. She explains that her investigation is nearly complete and that she will return to her post the following day. Before leaving, she wishes Damien a safe journey. He returns her farewell with a gentle smile. Before parting, Agnes adds that if he ever changes his mind about joining them, he should let her know. But Damien's reply is firm. He will not waver in his decision. Finally, Damien asks Victor if his luggage is ready. Victor confirms it is, and Damien boards the travel carriage. Settling into the spacious interior, he comments on its comfort, only to be caught off guard when he notices the envoy from House Gold Pixie already seated inside. The envoy, wearing a polite expression, explains that he is there to ensure Damien's comfort throughout the long journey. Damien smiles calmly in return and replies that such thoughtfulness is much appreciated. Damien leans back in the carriage and casually requests a luxurious crab meal for lunch, leaving the envoy blinking in confusion at such an odd demand. Turning to Victor, seated beside him, Damien calls his name. "Yes, young master." Victor responds eagerly, his voice full of energy. Without hesitation, he raises his voice, announcing with excitement the official start of their journey. The horses burst forward, the carriage picking up speed as Damien sits with unwavering determination. Looking ahead, he declares firmly that their destination is the ducal estate of House Gold Pixie. When they arrive, the grandeur of the mansion leaves Damien silently impressed. Standing before the enormous estate with Victor and the envoy at his side, he admits inwardly that the Gold Pixie residence truly lives up to its reputation. With a faint smile, Damien thanks the envoy, saying he won't forget that things have gone smoothly thanks to his help. The envoy replies stiffly, stating that the Duke has already been informed of Damien's arrival and that he may enter immediately. Once back inside the carriage, however, the envoy sulks, stewing over his misfortune. He curses Damien in his thoughts, blaming him for dragging him out of his comfortable life and into this mess. Quietly, he hopes everything goes smoothly and that he won't end up dead, though deep down, a darker wish lingers. Before entering the mansion, Damien turns to Victor with a smile, assuring him that he will return soon. "Yes, young master." Victor answers with his usual enthusiasm. Inside, Damien is greeted with suspicion. Someone asks if he is truly Damien Haxon. Soon after, Duke Adam Gold Pixie himself steps forward, studying him and asking directly if he is indeed the son of House Haxon he's heard so much about. Damien responds politely, thanking the Duke for acknowledging him, though inwardly he mutters to himself that all nobles are the same. Still, He keeps his anger contained, reminding himself that he came here for a single purpose. The Duke then mentions that someone named Dmitri informed him Damien was seeking an audience and asks why. Damien answers calmly. He had borrowed money from the Duke's loan office, and the repayment deadline has already passed. Is that so? The Duke asks, intrigued. Then that makes you my customer. Damien nods and explains that while he does not currently have the funds, he wishes to repay the debt in a different way. Curious, the Duke leans in and asks what he means. Damien's answer is simple yet bold. Rather than money, he declares he will defeat House Leon Blum, and that victory will serve as full repayment of the debt he owes. The Duke and his men are caught off guard by Damien's sudden declaration. But instead of anger, the Duke breaks into laughter, remarking that the boy must have already caught wind of the latest news. Sir Jael Heimlich nods in agreement, saying it does seem that way. Damien, however, grows thoughtful. In truth, everyone in the Apple Kingdom has heard the rumor, the discovery of a vast gold mine along the border. Now, two noble houses, Lion Bloom and Gold Pixie, are locked in a fierce struggle for control. Their dispute has already spilled into duels among lower-ranking knights, each fight a step toward determining the mine's ownership. But Damien knows how this will unfold. In his mind, the outcome is clear. House Lion Bloom will claim victory, and their influence will spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, House Gold Pixie's strength will begin to fade. Still, Damien sees opportunity. If he can tip the scales in Duke Adam Gold Pixie's favor and secure his victory, not only will he repay his debt, but he'll also gain leverage over House Lion Bloom, achieving both goals in one stroke. The Duke leans forward, intrigued, and asks if Damien truly has the courage to take on the powerful Lion Bloom family and crush one of their main forces. Damien answers with a calm smile, saying that such a possibility isn't far-fetched at all. The Duke admits he's been struggling to find a suitable knight for the duel. Without hesitation, Damien steps forward, declaring himself the best candidate. No knight of low rank, he says, can hope to match Lion Bloom's eldest son, except him. Raising an eyebrow, the Duke presses further. Does Damien truly believe he can defeat Michael Lion Bloom, a man famed for his mastery in duels? Damien's confidence doesn't waver. He replies that he knows Michael's abilities all too well, but he will never lose to him. At that moment, Knight Ernst Hovitz cuts in, warning the Duke not to take Damien's words at face value. Rumors, he says, are often blown out of proportion. Ernst goes on to remind them that Lady Chelsea is still out seeking a knight worthy of facing Michael Lion Bloom, and she is bound to return soon. Hovitz speaks up, assuring the Duke that Lady Chelsea will return soon, and that she will no doubt find a duelist of exceptional skill. His confidence is echoed by Hovitz and the other knights, who smile with certainty as the Duke nods in agreement. Damien quickly realizes what's happening. Hovitz is deliberately trying to block his path, and in Damien's mind, the man is nothing more than a useless obstacle, like a bone gnawed hollow by a ghoul. The Duke leans back at his desk, musing aloud, uncertain how to proceed in such a situation. Damien immediately senses the test hidden in the Duke's words. This is not a matter of talk alone. He must prove himself through action. With steady conviction, Damien declares that everyone here is making a mistake. Turning directly to Hovitz, he says if the Duke truly wishes to win the duel, then he has no choice but to choose him. No other knight can stand against their opponent. Hovitz bristles with anger at Damien's bold claim, demanding if he even knows whom Lady Chelsea is bringing back as a challenger. Damien, calm as ever, offers a chilling proposal. If Hovitz doubts him, he is welcome to try striking him once, if he can. The hall falls silent as Hovitz's face twists with fury and disbelief at Damien's audacity. Unable to hold back, Hovitz demands permission to test Damien directly. The Duke, intrigued by the rising tension, grants it without hesitation. The atmosphere grows charged, excitement thickening the air as the stage is set. Soon, Damien and Hovitz stand across from one another on the dueling grounds. From the side, Victor watches with shock and unease. whispering to himself in disbelief at what the young master has gotten himself into. Damien, however, brushes it off, saying this is simply how things turned out, with no planning on his part. Victor grows increasingly anxious as he witnesses the knights surrounding the field, their auras flaring violently. A suffocating pressure fills the air, and Duke Goldpixie issues a crisp command for Hovitz to begin at once. Hovitz accepts with calm determination, stepping forward with a sneer. He addresses Damien mockingly, promising that if he begs now, perhaps he might consider sparing him. Damien responds with nothing but a lazy yawn, coldly telling Hovitz to hurry up before he falls asleep. The remark strikes Hovitz like a slap, sending him into a rage. With clenched fists, Hovitz channels his aura into his weapon, forcing it to the point where the energy envelopes his entire body. A violent shockwave bursts outward, rattling the ground. Fixing his glare on Damien, he confirms one last time. So, it's the ultimate attack you wanted, right? Damien remains calm, though inside he briefly wonders if he may have pushed Hubbets a little too far. With a furious roar, Hubbets charges at Damien, vowing to shatter his face with a single strike. He lunges forward at full speed, his weapon aimed straight for the kill. Damien watches closely, unfazed by the pressure pressing down on him. To him, this is nothing more than what one would expect from a mid-tier knight. If he can read the aim of the strike, dodging or deflecting it won't be too difficult. And then he sees it. The spear is locked on the center of his chest. As Hubbets thrusts forward with all his strength, Damien meets the blow head-on, catching it with the flat of his sword. The impact is immense. Cracks spread across Damien's blade as it strains under the force of the strike. A sinister grin spreads across Hubbets' face. Inwardly, he mocks Damien as a fool for walking straight into his trap. He laughs with wild delight as blood bursts from Damien's chest and the young man collapses. Gasps erupt. Both Victor and Duke Goldpixie cry out in shock, horrified by the sudden wound. That's where we'll leave it for now. If you want to catch the next part, make sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss it.